For a Watertown City Council meeting for December 18th of 2023. Please rise while Elizabeth Smith, who is interning here at City Hall over her winter break. She is what grade are you at USF?
I'm a junior.
She's a junior at University of Sioux Falls studying pre-law, and she is helping us out at City Hall, going through some of our old records to tell us what we have here. So Elizabeth Smith is here, and she will lead us in prayer.
Dear Jesus, thank you so much for the chance that we get to be able to gather here today, and I ask for a sense of peace and calmness as we discuss these issues on the docket today. I ask that you please help everyone to be able to speak with a clear mind, and that this is organized and in a good fashion so that we can all communicate clearly and be able to solve the issues that we will be dealing with today well. Thank you, Jesus, for this Christmas time that's coming up and that we're experiencing right now, and I ask for a restful holiday for all of us and just wonderful time with family. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Shetty?
Here.
Tupper?
Here.
Bueller?
Here.
Danforth?
Here.
Pauline?
Here.
Jurgens?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
Thank you.
Quorum is established. The chair will entertain a motion to approve today's agenda. Motion made by Councilman Peters, second by Councilman Bueller. Any conversation on that? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We're on to open forum. If anyone is here who would like to address the council on a topic that is not on tonight's agenda, now is your time to do so. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close or open forum, and we'll go straight onto our agenda. Item 9A is an approval of the 2023 IAFF Collective Bargaining Agreement Addendum. City Manager Mack, please tell us more.
Thank you, Mayor. What you have in front of you is the 2024, what will be the 2024 agreement with the Firefighters Union. Key highlights for this agreement, well, first a little context, the last 2 years, so 22 and 23, we have kept negotiations to wages and ancillary benefits. In 2024, the entire contracts will be open for language negotiations. Key highlights here, a 5% cost of living adjustment applied to the matrix, step movement, which equates approximately 2%. The city will match up to $1,500 per year for an employee supplemental retirement fund because firefighters do not contribute the 6% of their wages to Social Security, and the city does not then match that 6%. And again, then the full contract will be opened in 2024. Those are the key highlights, and I would stand by for any questions.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the addendum. Motion made by Councilman Tupper.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bueller. Let's open it up for questions and comments, Council. Councilman Danforth?
Thank you, Mayor. I got, well, probably got a lot of questions, but I find myself not knowing near as much about our wage and salary and benefits, the whole structure and such than I probably should. But question I have is when we look at establishing possible increases in wages for the year, we usually associate that to cost of living raises. So my question is, why do we use both a matrix and a cost of living number versus just a cost of living adjustment? Why do we include the matrix adjustment in that? Because it's my understanding that the matrix was first established to account for longevity in employment. I believe that was, is that correct?
City Manager Mack?
So why are we using it?
Well, we apply the cost of living to the matrix. So the matrix sets the wages for all employees. So if you are $10 an hour, just for easy math, the base wage is $10 an hour. the 5% gets applied to that $10 an hour and across the board, across all of the steps on the matrix. And then if we give step movement, then you move from step 1 to step 2, which that step movement equates about 2%. So the total increase to employee wages for 2024 and what is budgeted for is the 7%.
And I understand that. My question is, why do we just not all apply it? I understand that the matrix numbers go up. Why aren't we applying it all to just a cost of living number? Because by moving them, any employee up the matrix, they're bottoming out, so to speak, at the top,
At some point,
really
yeah.
before they're intended to.
At some point, every employee, I mean, if they spend their career here, will hit the top of the matrix. We give step movement to allow for, trying to think of the right words to say. If you want to jump in, you sure can. But step movement allows for growth in wages for the employee. So if you just give 7% to the base and you never move up the steps, you fall behind on wages compared to not just other communities, but the private sector as well. That's how it's built, is to keep up with inflation and to be competitive with similarly sized communities, and for positions that we typically lose people to the private sector to.
Finance Officer Bob Zine would like to add something.
The only other part of the movement of the steps is to kind of stop compression. We did do an adjustment, I think it was in 2020, that kind of dealt with that compression. So if we didn't ever give the steps to the employees, then your new hires and like 5-year employees would still be at that same wage of movement. So the steps does kind of equate to the years of service. So I don't know if that helps.
Councilman Danforth? Any other questions or comments? Councilman Bueller?
Yeah, I think we might want to define for the audience what compression means.
Well, that exactly what Finance Officer Bob Zine said. Compression exists when you have employees who have been here for a length of time, 3, 5, 10 years, and their wages are compressed with new hires. So the nice thing about a wage matrix is that it helps spread out those individuals. It also helps control your costs for positions. So you know that any given position in any given year is only going to cost as much as the highest part of the matrix will say that it costs. So the matrix, the current matrix, was adopted in 2020, and then in fiscal year 2022 is when we addressed compression for, gosh, a whole host of employees that were compressed when they came onto the new matrix.
Councilman Bueller? No? Councilman Tupper?
So my understanding of the compression, and correct me if I'm wrong, so let's say you got that $10 an hour, just to use a number, and the person that moves up the step and the grade, now next year we take that starting wage from $10 an hour to $11 an hour. That's where you're talking about the compression, where our starting wage comes from the beginning. If you got to raise wages to be competitive, pretty soon that person's been here 3-4 years, is making the same amount of money as somebody just starting, or could be.
But we still run into compression here and there. Sometimes you just can't get away from it. You may be bringing somebody in who's, particularly with the union positions, there's not quite the flexibility in step movement as there is with non-union positions, although the unions have been very accommodating to that. If we need to bring someone in at a higher wage just to get them here, they've typically agreed to that. But you can't fully address compression. It does exist, but you try to prevent it as much as you can.
Any further questions? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the addendum. All those in favor will say aye, opposed say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Shetty?
Aye.
Tupper?
Aye.
Bueller? Danforth?
Aye.
Helene?
Aye.
Jurens?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Moving on to item B, an approval of the 2024 AFSCME, or American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees Collective Bargaining Agreement Addendum. City Manager Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Very similar, the 5% cost of living adjustment, the approximately 2% step movement. Full contract is open in 2024. We did include in here language that for employees that would not be receiving a step, meaning they're currently on the highest step, we would include that $1,000 bonus, if you will. There are 4 AFSCME employees who would qualify for that. With that, I'll stand by for any questions.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to approve this addendum. Motion made by Councilman Shetty, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Let's open it up for questions, council. Any questions? Hearing no questions, no comments, we're just going to do a voice vote. All those in favor of approving this addendum, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item C is an approval of the 2024 WPOA, or Watertown Police Officers Association Collective Bargaining Agreement Addendum. City Manager Mack, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Very similar to the other 2 agreements, 5% cost of living, 2%, roughly 2% step movement. There is an amendment on its cleanup language from negotiations that occurred in 2020 and 2021 related to when city facilities are closed by official action. So it mirrors the other 2 agreements. And then an amendment on night differential pay. And with that, I'll stand by for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, council? Councilman Danforth.
Ms. Mack, so I want to make sure I understand on that, just for clarity purposes. If people come in to work and we have to shut down for snow, send them home, they get paid for that time that they're sent home, correct?
Yeah, so, well, yes and no. So the way that it works is if city facilities are closed, whether it's before the workday or we got here and we decided to close at noon, what happens is hour for hour that you are sent home, you receive an hour of comp time. And then you use that comp time to cover the time that you were sent home. So you're made whole. So we don't require employees, so if we close City Hall and send everybody home because it's terrible out, we don't want people out on the roads, we don't require them to use their vacation or take unpaid leave because we are sending them home.
Okay, so in essence, we're paying that. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what the
yeah.
bottom line is, right? So my question on that is I know that you're getting all of these to read the same, which
Mm-hmm.
it should. So are you indicating at that point that this has been an ongoing policy and practice of ours prior to
Yes.
anything in here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. This specific language that's in AFSCME and the fire contract was approved in 2021. And I think we just missed it with WPOA to make sure that it was the same language. So all employees are getting treated the same. From a payroll perspective, it's kind of a nightmare to have different languages there.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, we will do a roll call vote. All those in favor of the addendum, approving the addendum, will say aye. Opposed, say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Shetty?
Aye.
Tupper?
Aye.
Bueller? Danforth?
All right.
Helene?
Aye.
Jurens?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Motion carries. We're on to item D, an agreement between the City of Watertown acting by and through its Watertown Police Department and the Glacial Lakes Humane Society. We're going to start by going to our city attorney, Lisa Carrico.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the Glacial Lakes Humane Society, as you know, provides our pet shelter for the community and for our police department. And basically, their agreement terminated in this year, 2023. and will end at the end of December. So at this point, we got together with the police department that does the enforcement, along with the GLHS director and board, and these are the terms of the new agreement that we have arrived at. There will be an increase that we are asking of the council. I believe they were getting 32, 34, and will now be, no?
Oh, they were at 40.
40, I'm
were
sorry.
40.
They were getting 40, and now they will have 50. And part of that is just increased costs, as you know of, in all facets of our city government and in the community, just rising costs. So if there's any questions, either myself or the police department can answer your questions.
And I know said representatives of the police department are here. Chief Toomey, would you like to add anything to this? All right. This is not something that I need to do a public hearing upon, but I do know that there are representatives from the Humane Society here, so I would welcome you to address the council if there is something that you would like to say. You don't have to. You could just sit by and see if there's any questions. But if you did want to address the council, you are more than welcome to. All good? Okay, thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agreement. Motion made by Councilman Danforth, seconded by Councilman Peters. Let's open it up for comments and questions. Anything? Councilman Danforth?
And I'm just going to make a comment. There's been times over the years when my dog's been with them, where it escaped from the house, and I was very glad that they got my dog, and they provide a really, really good service to our community, and I'm thankful that you're here, so thank you.
I would echo that on behalf of the community. I know that the Humane Society provides a very valuable service, and I know that people appreciate you, but I'm not sure if you hear that enough. And I want to thank everyone on your board and the representatives that brought this first to my concern or my attention. And I apologize, it did take us a couple months to hash out an agreement, but I hope that it's something that we are both happy with and mutually beneficial for the community and for the Humane Society as well going forward. So we do want to say thank you for all the work that you do. All right. Hearing none, the motion is to approve this agreement. All those in favor will say aye, opposed say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Shetty?
Aye.
Tupper?
Aye.
Bueller? Danforth?
All right,
Helene?
Aye.
Jurens?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We're on to item E, an approval of assignment of the development agreements of the Lofts LLC to VKB Properties LLC. City Attorney Carrico, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, basically, the owner of the lofts is selling the property to a new buyer. As you know, council, I had previously provided you some correspondence on the due diligence of the buying entity. It appears to be a family-owned business that has done real estate and both residential and commercial development. They are based out of Nebraska and are looking to engage here in Watertown. That being said, obviously, there are several agreements that were in place on this property that will be assigned to the new buyer. The development agreement also involves the WDC. I did check with Public Works, and the development aspects are done. We're at this point just dealing with the TIF payments toward the loan and any ancillary payments going between the developer, WDC, and the city. But we will need to assign that development agreement just flat out to the new buyer. And so at this point, I'm asking for a motion to approve of the assignment of the development agreement of the lofts to VKB Properties LLC and authorize the city manager to finalize the terms and execute same, just because we still need to kind of flesh that out between the three parties.
Attorney Carrico, would you please rephrase that? So again, authorize the city manager to
Finalize terms and execute same.
finalize terms and execute same.
And I'll stand by for any questions.
So the exact wording of the motion will differ slightly from what you have read in the agenda, but I don't think it's substantial enough to justify any amendment or anything. I'm just going to ask for a straight up motion to approve. I'm going to read it out loud to make it official. Approval of assignment of the development agreement of the Lofts LLC to VKB Properties LLC and authorize the city manager to finalize and execute the same.
Thank you, Mayor.
Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Questions or comments? Councilman Peters.
So I'm understanding this correctly, the city manager will go and negotiate and then execute it, will not come back to the council for approval. That's correct, right?
City
Correct.
Attorney Carrico.
Sorry. Yes, part of that was because the closing was coming up and we didn't want to force the council to come to a special meeting. As far as the assignment goes, though, it would basically just be a flat document, just basically replacing the lofts with VKB properties. It's just that we needed a WDC to also sign off.
And Attorney Carrico, you did say if there was substantial alterations from what we are presenting here, then you would say, bring it back to the council.
Yes, and the city manager would have to at least run it up the flagpole, so to
Yeah.
speak. Yes.
Councilman Peters? Okay. Councilman Danforth?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm kind of collecting my thoughts, too. It's the question I had, and I think I had put in an email to you all this morning, trying to get an answer there, but because we don't have the original documents that were put in place, is there a, I'm not sure what the word is there an obligation on our part for the terms of this to be granted to any new purchaser?
So basically, the development agreement, number one, did not have a due on sale clause. So we weren't able to just basically say you have to pay off the loan. The second thing is it did not have any language regarding assignment. So it doesn't have anything in it that requires us to assign, but it also didn't forbid the assignment. Now, by virtue of most developers, they end up, they do sell, so we needed to have some mechanism for them to be able to transfer it over. I would also note that the new buyer will also be personal guaranteeing the loan, as the previous owner did as well.
So my next question is we don't have the specific terms that are ultimately going to be agreed to on this whole scenario, correct?
Correct, so,
Because city manager will be working on those, and you, I'm assuming, as well.
correct. The only thing I can tell you is they will be similar to the next one that's on the agenda, which is the assignment of the promissory note.
Okay, so my question is what would trigger it to ever come back to the council for the terms?
It would be something if they were wanting to either extend the term of repayment or change the financial figures in that sense. Anything dealing with either time frame that would change from the original agreement and the monetary amount. Because really all we're probably going to be doing is just, now it's, like I said, replacing the parties.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilman Jurens.
So negotiations, what can be negotiated? If the dollar amount and the parties can't be negotiated, what's negotiable? What's going to change between now and then?
Partly it's because you guys don't have the draft agreement in front of you
Okay.
in order to approve it, yes. Which was in correspondence to my previous email, just time constraints.
Follow-up?
Follow-up is off of Councilman Danforth's question. Are we going to be staying in the banking business at the end of this? Is there a get out clause on this one?
So with this particular development agreement, basically, we front-ended a loan of $1.8 million that is being paid back with our TIF payments. However, the TIF payments will not meet the loan within 20 years, so there's a balloon at the end. Now, it's not titled as a balloon. In other words, they have until 2040 to pay the full 1.8. Whatever the shortfall is has to be paid by 2040, and the buyer personally guarantees that as well. That's already in the development agreement, and it's in the promissory note.
Councilman Jurens.
As far as future philosophies, that's up to the council.
So it's probably going to get sold again,
It could,
and we're going to continue assuming that?
yes,
Is that what the written words say right now?
correct,
Okay. So we will continue to be the bank.
correct.
All right. I'm going to leave the rest of my comments to myself.
Councilman Peters.
So to Councilman Juren's point, it's my understanding, to use this phrase, we'll be in the banking business until 2040, right? Until this TIF is paid off. Just so I'm understanding that correctly.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further comments or questions? And I would just add, on this property, yes, would the city of Watertown enter into another agreement like this? I highly doubt it. But at the same time, we can't change the past, so let's not dwell on it, but let's look at what it actually did do, which is it did actually help bring in revitalization of downtown Watertown. So while it might not have been an agreement that we would repeat, let's just at least focus upon what we did do right, which is put our energy and our money where our mouth was into downtown Watertown. However imperfect that may be, the result has been pretty good. So we'll focus on that and just make the best of what we can. Any further comments? All right. The motion is to approve the assignment of the development agreement and authorize the city manager to finalize and execute the same. All those in favor will say aye, opposed say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Shetty?
Aye.
Tupper?
Yeah.
Bueller? Danforth?
Aye.
Helene?
Aye.
Jurens?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We're on to item F, an approval of assignment of promissory note and loan agreements of the Lofts LLC to VKB Properties LLC. City Attorney Carrico, back to you.
So this is the byproduct of the development agreement. When they entered into the development agreement with the Lofts, there was a separate promissory note and loan agreement from the city to the Lofts, and there was a mortgage on file pursuant to the terms of that loan agreement. So I have previously presented council with copies via email about the drafts that were put together for that assignment. That goes in part with this development agreement, but it was a separate document, so I'm asking for a separate motion on that one. That one would be similar in that there would be an approval of assignment of promissory note and loan agreement of the Lofts LLC to VKB Properties LLC, along with all necessary ancillary documents, and to authorize the city manager to finalize terms and execute same. Your ancillary documents are also before you, which was the personal guarantee and the assignment of mortgage. Those are referred to in the assignment of the loan, so those would be your ancillary documents. And again, because these are still being reviewed by the buyer's attorney and the Lofts, we are asking that the authorization include the city manager to finalize terms and execute same. I've not received any feedback yet, and this again was to avoid having to call a special meeting. And again, there's no change in dollar amount. We would have to come back and/or length of the term.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the assignment of this promissory note and loan agreement. Motion made by Councilman Schutte, seconded by Councilman Peters. Comments and questions, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the assignment of the note and the loan agreement, and we'll just do a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We're on to item 10A, a first reading of an ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Watertown, South Dakota for lots 2 through 5, Mansell Second Edition, from its current designation of R1 Single Family Residential District to PUD, Planned Unit Development. We'll start off by going to our Assistant City Manager and Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So a brief synopsis or opening of this item here this evening. This is first reading of this rezone, so the council will get another consideration at it, of course, at the second reading, as is required by our processes. Eric Scott is the acting agent for Campsco LLC. He's submitted the petition to rezone lots 2 through 5 of the plat known as the Mansell Edition. He's looking to rezone that from the current zoning designation of R1 Single Family Residential to a planned unit otherwise known as a PUD. This land area contains just shy of 8 acres, which meets the minimum of 5 acres to proceed with a planned unit development within the city. The comprehensive land use plan, future land use maps define this as West Kempeska growth area, and with development considerations outlined, including unique compatibility with proximity to the lake that's outlined in those documents. As far as some of the normal formalities like parkland dedication or cash in lieu of that, that was all taken care of at the time of annexation and initial zoning. There was a sanitary sewer trunk line assessment that was collected at that time. There is a little bit remaining that would continue to be collected if this project goes through and it continues to develop additional land area. That's all noted in the case summary as well. A petition to rezone the same property from R1 to CL, Lake Commercial, was brought before the Planning Commission in March of 2023. That went forward with the recommendation to approve to council by a vote to 5-2, but then was subsequently denied unanimously by the City Council. With that, the applicant went back to the drawing board and is attempting to pass a rezone with the planned unit development option. In speculating, and also by the nature of a planned unit development, it's in part because of the detail that's required to be outlined in a PUD up front at the time of approval versus a list of otherwise somewhat general uses that could otherwise have occurred had it been rezoned as CL. This particular item, as far as the rezone to a PUD, did go to the Planning Commission, of course, as it always has to. 3 Planning Commission members voted in favor, 4 opposed this PUD plan, bringing it to the council with a non-recommendation for approval, which requires that the council has a supermajority or 5 out of 7 of you voting in favor of this project in order for it to occur for this rezone. With that, I have a team of staff here tonight from Engineering and Community Development, and we'll stand by for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Chair is going to break with protocol ever so slightly to perhaps make what I'm hoping is for a better public meeting, or at least a comprehensive public meeting. As everyone knows, this is a first reading, which does not mean that I have to take public hearing, but I will, both pro and con. But I was hoping that I would have staff answer some questions ahead of time that I know or expect would be asked, that were asked last week at the Plan Commission, that were asked back in March when this was brought before Plan Commission and Council. Director Von Eye, would you like to ask and answer some of these questions at this point, or should we take I would prefer to do it before we even take testimony.
Certainly, I'd favor that, Mayor.
So what I'm doing is there have been similar questions that have been raised regarding this area whenever any development has been proposed, and they have been similar, and I want to make sure that these are going to be answered. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to anticipate some of the questions. Maybe not all of them would have been asked tonight, but all of them are worthy of being asked. So if you have a question that is not asked and addressed tonight, then I would invite any public comment. But if it's just to come forward later and say, I oppose this, the time to do that, to just say, I don't like this and please vote against it, is at the second hearing. The first hearing is for information gathering, and then that's why we are trying to gather information. So part of that is to take the questions and make sure that we get them. So Director Von Eye?
Yes, absolutely. Mayor, would you like me to read through the list of questions known to us from the Planning Commission meeting? Is that
I would say just read the question and then answer it.
perfect? Thank you. One of the first questions, or one of the questions that came up, was related to the proposed detention pond on this site. And while I'm talking through these, I'll quick pull up the vicinity map or another drawing here, and I'll share that to Teams. Just for a little context on the area, of course, the Mansell Additions on the south end of the lake. It's the part of the land mass between Lake Kempeska to the north and Toby Slough to the south. And everything outlined in red here is the privately owned property that's in question to be part of the planned unit development. So one of the questions relates to the detention pond, and that's as outlined kind of the middle part of this drawing here, and whether that's allowed to be discharged directly to a body of water or waters of the state. The answer that the engineering staff have come back with on that is that yes, that is allowable. And if you think about it, it's really no different than any other parcel of land around the lake whose discharge flows directly off their property and into the lake. Here in this case, because of our detention requirements for development of this size, it's simply being collected first into an isolated area and then discharged, as opposed to just simply directly running off into the adjacent water bodies. So the net effect is essentially the same as what we're getting at there, with, however, the benefit that the detention pond provides by having some water quality components to it that does help filter some of the runoff contaminants that can occur from a site of this amount of density that you wouldn't otherwise see if this runoff were going directly into the water body. Another question
Director
was...
Von Eyde, before you go on, I just want to make clear that, just for the council, but also for everyone else. So you're saying with the detention pond, it's the same, better, worse, as far as the volume of water and the quality of the water? What, is it better, worse, net neutral?
I would say improved. The volume remains the same per our regulation, and the quality is improved because of the quality components we require in that detention pond.
Okay, per our regulation or per what happens after development, if development was to go forward?
Per our regulations in which how they would have to construct this in order to be compliant.
Okay, thank you.
Did I answer that?
Yes, and council, I'm not going to stop you. I mean, we're going to have a lot of times for questions and comments, but I just want to address the questions that I know were addressed at Plan Commission and then possibly left unanswered for our own information. Director Von Eyde?
One of the next questions is, did this development trigger any additional studies from our subdivision regs or engineering design standards? The two that come to mind, or that were, I believe both maybe were cited in the Planning Commission meeting, is a traffic impact analysis or an environmental impact assessment required of this development. As far as the traffic impact analysis, our engineering design standards were not triggered, and we do not require a traffic impact study for this development. It simply doesn't generate enough new traffic in order to trigger a traffic study. This has roughly 30 proposed single-family unit apartment or rental units on the south side. And I think 15 of these sportsman shops type facilities on the north side. So right around 45 potential residential units. Our engineering design standards wouldn't trigger a traffic impact study until you reach 150 single-family units. So we're about we're just under a third of the way of what it would be triggered for a traffic study to be done. And that's not uncommon for communities to have a threshold of new traffic being generated before they require the extents and the cost and the impact of a traffic study being performed. Theory being, most of your two-lane residential streets can take on quite a bit of traffic before something of that nature is needed to justify the increase. The other part of that, the environmental impact assessment, that would be triggered if there's work being done in a wetland. And I say if because we have an existing wetland determination map, wetland jurisdiction is shown on that map. And what's not known is whether that's up to date and accurate. So before any of this work could commence on this site, we would require the developer to go through a wetland determination with the Corps of Engineers. And the Corps would then decide whether any of this area being proposed to be graded, developed, built on, et cetera, is part of a official jurisdictional wetland. So if that does happen, they are then required to perform an environmental impact assessment and to the satisfaction of the Corps of the Engineers, and do any wetland mitigation that they may or may not allow, or modify their plan in order to be compliant with the Corps of Engineers. So those are things yet to be determined that come with an extensive level of detailed analysis after the zoning function is carried out. Any questions on the environmental impact? The next question, can the detention pond be graded where it's proposed? This question came up at the Planning Commission meeting, mainly for two reasons. One, it appears like it's part of the wetland. Again, the answer to that comes in my previous point I made, when that wetland determination is carried out. And then the second point was the concern of the hydraulic connectivity between the lake and the slough. There is a culvert that exists now today that runs under South Lake Drive and between or through these private properties to the north, and a channel that also connects then to the slough. So staff would recommend that that hydraulic connection remain, and we've made the applicant aware of that, and would work that out with them. If this were to be approved, staff would recommend it would be with that note, that the council would approve it with retaining this hydraulic connection between the slough and the lake. There is on this plan what could be called a fish passage or a fish structure or other kind of environmental connectivity between the two water bodies. And some of that includes a concrete box culvert type structure and then an open channel to be graded so that there is improved connectivity between these two bodies of water. This improvement, the question at hand is whether the city would plan to perform that improvement or not, or whether we budgeted for that. Because as it's shown on their site plan, it's essentially noted to be work done by others, i.e. the city. You know, it's just what I would say, it's shown for representative purposes of what could be done in the future if the city so elected to. This is not an improvement that the developer is proposing to do right now with their project. As far as whether the city has planned for this improvement, the answer to that would be no. We have not set aside or budgeted any money for a fish passage to be improved at this location. Our Lake Compesca Master Plan does identify these types of improvements all around the lake as a potential and a favorable benefit to the water quality of the lake by having those connections to the several of the sloughs that surround the lake. However, like I said, it's not in our budget. We wouldn't anticipate carrying that out, at least not in the immediate future. Not to say that we couldn't in the future down the road after budgeting appropriately for it. Not a necessity. It doesn't impact any of the approvals for this PUD from a requirement standpoint or anything like that. The next question that came up is the bike path. The developer's planning to realign the bike path, and that's this dotted pathway represented going around their development, and then kind of meandering throughout the PUD, the planned unit development, as opposed to strictly running roadside right along South Lake Drive. So, the question is can that be realigned? The answer to the question is yes, as far as city staff are concerned, it can certainly be realigned. We do have an application into the state right now for this segment of pathway and funding from the state. So if this PUD were approved, we would immediately want to contact the state and approach them about this potential realignment and get their feedback just to make sure that we can amend our application to show it aligned in this manner. From staff standpoint, constructability, things of that nature, it might impact the cost of construction a little bit depending on some of the terrain that we're going through here and how much fill and granular material might need to be hauled in to support the pathway. But I think, again, from a staff standpoint, we would all agree that it would be a safer route than the roadside stretch that would otherwise be constructed as proposed in the current application. Short answer to that question is yes, it certainly could be realigned, but it would have to be pending the state's approval of funding that relocation in our current application. Another question that came up, Planning Commission meeting, will vehicles back onto South Lake Drive? And quick answer to that is no, they would not. The internal roadways, the private drives, the access, they're all designed and constructed to handle that on-site traffic maneuvering, so that anybody exiting this site should be driving outward from the site onto the road. The amount of fill being proposed in this area was questioned, and I think kind of specifically related to the amount of fill compared to what a CL would have brought for fill, and also in comparison to the current R1 zoning. Without going into some extensive calculations, I can't tell you the exact quantity of cubic yards of dirt for each of those three scenarios, but I can say that the CL that they had proposed had a similar amount of density in impervious areas being proposed and meeting their 50% impervious area by some of the other land mass, as is shown on this PUD. Because as I zoom out or go to another map, they own all the way down into this peninsula, which is all part of the land mass that was also part of the CL zoning to help meet the 50% imperviousness required under the CL. Now with the residential zoning, the amount of imperviousness and the amount of fill that's required, I think it's logical to say that the residential zoning that exists today would have less imperviousness. However, it's not a given that would have less fill. If this land were broken into as many residential lots as you could, I believe it equated to 20, just over 20 lots. And each one of those 20 lots, just like everyone around the lake, as they have to build a single-family residence, they have to do so to be at or above the base flood elevation. In order to do that, you end up filling a majority of your lot in these areas around the lake. And that's all done by requirements of our floodplain regulations. So residential development in this area would require fill because it's in our floodplain, just like this development requires fill as it's in our floodplain. The amount of fill to be proposed here, I believe the developer's engineer spoke to this at the last meeting. It depends on where you're at on the site, but anywhere from a foot to 4 to 5 feet. You know, there's low spots in and around the land area that they'd be proposing to fill. And again, none of those are anticipated to be wetland area. Only non-wetland area is what is anticipated to be filled by the developer. Let's see, I think that I'm wrapping down to the end here of known questions. Traffic generation, we talked about that. Zebra mussels and this hydraulic connectivity improvement potentially increasing the risk of zebra mussel contamination over into the slough. I don't know with certainty, but I would speculate that if the zebra mussels have not made it through this hydraulic connectivity, they will at some point in the future. But again, I can't speak with any level of expertise whether zebra mussels exist in the slough yet today or not. But I do know that one point of hydraulic connectivity is just the same as another when it comes to their ability to migrate and contaminate another body of water. So I could see that being a risk either to the current situation or under the proposed improved fish passage. With that, Mayor, I believe that covers most of the questions that came up or that were proposed to staff, whether at the Planning Commission meeting or in conversations afterwards that we've received from individuals.
Thank you very much, Director Von Eye. And I just want to explain again, what I was intending to do is just show the public and the council that we are trying to have as thorough of a conversation on this as possible to make sure that questions that we know are concerns to people are being addressed, but also in a way that we can move forward with council business. So I want to thank the Plan Commission for asking a lot of these great questions. And I just want to say that part of why I'm doing this is because we know a lot of these concerns have been lingering for quite some time at this exact location, because between Toby Slough, other areas around Lake Compesca, and just the CL zoning in general, I can say that easily within the last year and a half, the council has had probably a collective 100 hours of conversation about it, and probably 10 times that amount in information gathering individually So it's something that we have been paying very close attention to, and I hope that these questions listed off and asked and answered are showing that we are trying to learn our best. I don't want anyone to think that this means that we know how this is going to go. In fact, I believe that, I honestly don't even know, and that's not what tonight is about. Tonight is about information gathering. A couple weeks from now, that first meeting in January is the public hearing where we will actually vote and voice our personal feelings on that. This is to gather information and ask questions and make sure that they are asked. With that said, I'm going to now ask for testimony. I believe with a lot of these questions already asked, I believe I don't need to cap it, but I am going to be watching this and making sure that we move on. I'm asking people to not be redundant on anything, but I will ask for proponent testimony now.
Eric Scott with Camsco. Not a lot to say. Thanks, Reed, Chairman, for conducting that way, a concise way to present the information. Appreciate it. I just say this is Aaron Hansen, lives right across the street here. He's a partner on this project, and it really stems from we presented the PUD because there was a lot of questions and concern about a CL, gas stations, what is going to be able to be built there. So the PUD was a initiative for us to plan that further, show exactly what would be built. One of the reasons we didn't do that with the CL is we know there's a demand for contractor shops or sportsmen's condos there. We know we can sell several of those right away. I would like to present some housing in here. I think it's a great area. I think it'd be a great area for light to medium density housing. Obviously, it's more dense than single-family homes. So this is the vision, a little more well-baked and well thought out for consideration. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Do we have any further proponent testimony?
Thanks again, Reed. I echo Eric's response. Mayor, sorry, excuse me, Mayor. Just a little bit more in what Eric had to say. The main thought here with doing this PUD, having it, again, a little bit more baked, if you will, is that we could do this in a manner where it's better for wildlife and sustainability is really the thought, as opposed to if we were to take this same project and make it all residential. It would have more of a negative effect on the wildlife and the water quality. Again, that's part of the reason I became involved with it, is so that way I could see that through and hopefully do this in a manner that better protected the lake that I live on.
Thank you. Any further proponent testimony? Mr. Scott, Mr. Hansen, I'd like to ask you to recognize the third individual. I know he was here for the Plan Commission as well. I just want to know his name in case people have a question later on. No, I'm not with them. Okay, I thought you were. I'm sorry. I thought I recognized you from the Plan Commission. I got it. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, now you are on the proponent side. No. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I want to acknowledge right off the bat that we have the back row and possibly another person or two that is, I know, in opposition to this or has testified recently and against it. I also know that there has been a citizen that has been going out and collecting signatures on a letter that expresses displeasure and disagreement with this. I want to acknowledge that. It is pretty sizable. Just want to acknowledge that into public record. If anyone wants to look at it, they sure can. And with that, I will ask for any opponent testimony. I again ask you, I'm not asking you if you like it or don't like it. I'm asking, do you have a concern about this that we should know about before voting on it? And just come on forward. Just recognize who you are, where you live, and if you're with anybody or by yourself.
My name is John Kessler. I live at 938 South Lake Drive. And spent many years living at 1030 South Lake Drive, so I'm very familiar with this area. It's just off the corner of this development. And in keeping with Mayor Holine's recommendation that we just keep this to questions and answers, most of what was brought up by me has been addressed by Mr. Von Eye. But the one question that I would have that wasn't discussed was what effect would this have on flood control between Lake Compesca and Toby Slough with that culvert? That's one item that was not addressed in that. But with that, I'll leave the rest of my comments for the second reading.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to make a note of that question and make sure that that is asked and answered, but I'm going to take other opponent testimony.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Director.
if I could get a point of clarity on that last question, is Mr. Kessler referring to the proposed improved culvert or the existing culvert?
I would ask Mr. Kessler to clarify, to make sure that we understand his question.
Well, the question was more addressed to the current culvert and whether that would change the hydrology between the lake and Toby Slough. But beyond that, there is no plan for the fish highway, so that I guess that wasn't part of my question.
Yeah, that's correct, because we don't know if that fish highway will ever happen or not. So
Right.
we have to just vote upon what we are presented with in real life. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Beasley, and I live across on the lake, 1032 South Lake Drive. This is my third city council meeting, and one planning commission later, we're still addressing this. Anyhow, just a minute. One of my things is they have to do something, Heath addressed it, about the landmass. They're using that island as part of their landmass in order to build this much. How are they're adding that in, that little peak that comes out? That's really stretching it as far as using that as the landmass in order to be able to build on it. Not only that, last year it was 6 units that we were against. This time it's 45 units of housing we're against. I don't think anything's changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further opponents?
My name is Lauren Berg. I am wondering who is got the responsibility of keeping the grass waterway or the ditch, whatever you want to call it, the existing one, clean and operable.
Mr. Berg, what, I just want to make sure.
From 212 to the landmass to the south. From the Lake Road to the south.
Okay, so from South Lake Drive, so like looking at
The
here.
channel.
The channel, okay, the channel.
Who is going to keep that open and clean?
The existing
The
channel.
existing channel.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
Not really, no. I'll keep mine till next time.
Okay. Any further opponents? Yeah, Mr. Berg, just a second. I believe the channel is the pipe, for lack of a better term. The existing pipe that connects Compesca to Toby Slough?
There's a pipe that runs from Lake Compesca to the edge of the road,
To,
to the north side of the road.
okay,
Then the road, there's a box culvert. Then from the south side of the road to Toby Slough, to the water mass, is an open channel. That's what I am concerned about. I'm concerned about the whole thing. Who has got responsibility keeping that open?
Okay.
Might not be now, might not be 20 years from now, but maybe after that, something happens to the culvert.
Is everyone clear on the location or what we're talking about? Okay, Councilman Tupper, if it's just to clarify what Mr. Berg said.
Mr. Berg, who takes care of the channel now, the culvert?
Well, the Bergs used to take care of it. My grandpa took care of it. My dad and Curtis Berg took care of it. But now it's in confusion. Who's going to take care of it? We
Okay.
took the responsibility of keeping that cleaned out. Who's got it now? Does the city have it? People own the land have it? Who?
Okay. All right, any further opponents?
My name is Ron DeVille. I live at 1062 South Lake Drive. That channel goes through my property. My concern is when they're talking about this body of water that's going to take all the contamination from their property. The way I understand it, they're going to move it towards that channel. Are they going to make that big, or who's going to take care of that as far as the cleanliness of it? Because I don't want all that junk coming down when Toby Slough runs into the lake. I don't want all that junk coming my way. Because there's going to be a lot of, there's always, with the human race, there's always garbage. Another thing is that nobody brought up that they bought that lot, those lots across, there's 88 feet. On the Lake Kempesca side, there's 2 old cabins. They got to take them out of there. They've been there for, I think they built them in 1945, and they've just been junk. So who's going to take? I mean, what are they going to do in that area? I was hearing they're going to move. They're going to have piers in over there, but you got residents over there. But the width of that property on the lakeside is 88 feet. So how are you going to handle that? I ended up getting, when we had that meeting over at Mansell's place, I got a little different schematics there. They had one on there where they had an apartment over there. They had a fishing pond. I don't see that on here. Over on the, it's on the east side of the channel. East side of the channel.
So is your question, is there a fishing pond here under this proposal?
Well, they're going to have to, I don't know what they're going to do. They're talking about that fish channel through there. The problem, you guys don't understand, flooding. We ended up getting a card from the city, Corps of Engineers, and they had to send us a questionnaire on flooding. That can flood. If you're going to start moving more water into that area over there, Lawrence says there's 4 culverts underneath the highway. Well, there's times when we get a lot of water and my channel is plugged. That water ends up right next to the edge of the road. So what you're going to do is you're going to have flooding. If you start playing around with the amount of water that goes into Toby Slough, if it can't get back out again at a certain time, you're going to have flooding on our side of the road. And you put another channel in there, and you're going to have flooding. So there's just a lot of things that are kind of thrown around, haven't really been answered. Another thing is, too, I got 3 minutes at that planning commission. That's all they gave me. I gave my name and a couple of, I said, hell with it. One of the ladies there brought this up on a PUD,
Planned unit development.
you can only have 6 people, maximum 6 people in a unit. So that sports, those 3 buildings there, that sports deal, how are they going to handle that? How about on these apartments up in the air. Anybody gonna, or is it up to the insurance company as far as fire exit? There are just a lot of little things that's got to be looked at. Wildlife. They're going to have that walkway close to Toby Slough. Those mama geese don't like people. And that could be a problem, and they've already ruined part of it because they filled it in already. We used to get a lot of geese. We don't get as many geese anymore. Now they go play around with some more. You can forget about the wildlife. So I grew up there. So I kind of know what's going on over there. But, you know, with flood control, like they talk about with this, my idea is just leave it alone. There's not going to be any more sloughs like that. Once they screw it up, it's gone. I had a lot of people from that last meeting I was at that stopped me on the streets and said, you guys did a good job when we had it shut down on that CL or whatever the heck they call it. And so there's a lot of people probably watching tonight. They're against it. Them screwing that up. You put a bike trail in there, what are you going to have again? More concrete, more asphalt, and more buildings to look at. You're not going to have anything for wildlife in that. So that's a few more questions. When on the second, I probably will have a few more, if you don't mind. So that's all.
All right. Thank you, Mr. DeVille. Any further opponents?
Yeah, excuse me, I had a cold all week, so.
Excuse me, what was your name, sir?
I hadn't given it yet.
Okay.
John Crump. I moved back here about 7 years ago. I was in the military for 20 years and traveled all over and kind of wanted to come back to this area to retire. So my experience has been over the last 7 years, just so you know where I come from. I just have a couple basic questions and nobody's answered it yet. Does the little island out there, is that part of the 5 acres to meet the requirement of the ordinance?
Yes.
It is. And isn't that underwater at times with the flooding and stuff? My understanding is, and looking at some pictures, that was underwater. So how do you include that as, and that you can talk, I don't need an answer tonight, but I'd just like to know how it's done. And then secondly, in terms of whether or not this is considered a area that's a waterway that needs to be studied, needs to have the Corps and the state get involved. I think somebody else pointed out, the problem I have is if you're letting people dump, fill, and everything else in there, that affects the whole possibility of this study. Most studies I've been involved with, they were done prior to approving the action that the individual wanted to have done. For example, the development. So why would we, in the interim, stop all fill from being done, which would ordinarily comply with the Corps, or would we do the study first and then approve what they're doing? Because if they don't approve it, I don't think it matters what your rezoning does. So why would you do that until you've got that done?
Mr. Crump, I just want to make sure that I have that question worded correctly.
Sure.
Would you, so the study changes based upon if it's done pre or post fill.
Right.
Your question is then, is the study going to be done pre-fill, post-fill?
Yeah. And it's going to be done, well, it should be done pre-fill, that's my point.
Okay.
Whether or not it's done
Is the study going to be done pre-fill?
pre-fill, because,
thanks.
or in the alternative, is the city going to stop any landfill? If it's determined that there needs to be a study done, would you stop the development then until bringing all that landfill in, until the study's done?
Okay, we'll make note of that.
So, and then in terms of the actual notice, I noticed that when you look at 213802, which talks about the application process and what they're supposed to do, one is the groups that look at it, the planning commission and the people that put the process together are supposed to make a determination of how this benefits the city. So I've not seen any piece of paperwork here as part of the PUD that indicates there's some sort of approval. The approval of this would benefit the city. And I would think there'd have to be a substantial benefit in that sense, but the ordinance isn't clear on that. So those are my issues. I just think I'd like to have those cleared up before, we decide to go ahead and make the changes that are being proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Crump. Any further opponents? Any further opponents? Okay, I'm going to close public testimony. I'm going to go through those questions and make sure that they are answered. Director Von Eye, if you do not have a comprehensive answer tonight, or Community Development Manager Hanton, I know that you're in the back there. If you do not want to give your answer tonight, if you want to make sure you study it, then just say so and we will answer it at the next hearing. But first question asked by Mr. Kessler, what effect will this have on flood control?
So the water body connectivity, that hydraulic connection that I spoke to in the opening comments, if the council were to approve this with staff recommendation to retain that hydraulic connectivity, the flood concerns regarding this channel connecting to this culvert, connecting to the lake, none of that will change. You essentially will have that same connectivity and that same functionality. That hydraulic connection would remain, which is why staff is recommending that. We don't want to see any interruption of this hydraulic connection that's existed for quite some time. We agree that that could compromise one water body or the other, or both, over time. And so we've already made that request be known to the developer, and they were looking into that with their engineer on how to accomplish that.
Okay, Director Von Eye, I'm going to take, and council, please tell me if you think I'm out of line here, but I want to make sure that we're understanding this, because I think what some of the opponents and some of the people on the council would be wondering is how would it possibly stay the same if you're bringing in that much fill? Because wouldn't it have to have some effect on flood control?
Let me show you, I'll toggle between this.
And I want to make it clear to the council, I'm neither pro nor con here. I'm just trying to get this information out. So
I think the answer is twofold. There's 2 points of logic there. One is the impact of this particular channel. I assume you can see my screen there. Am I correct?
Yes, thank you.
So there's this water channel that's been referenced several times here this evening that connects the slough to the lake through a culvert. So the first part of your question, I think, has to do with that particular point of connectivity. If we require the developer to preserve that hydraulic connectivity, nothing changes. The circumstance here today, how this water body connects to that one, then remains the same. The second part of your question has to do with the fill that can go on this property, this private property that's outlined in the turquoise color, barring any wetland determination. Now, if they go through the wetland determination and the Corps of Engineers says, hey, guess what, this isn't the outline of the wetland, it actually comes up into here, covers this channel, it maybe impedes some of this area a little bit more, that's what the Corps would figure out in their determination. So those areas would follow the heavily regulated requirements of any wetland. Most likely being unfillable or undevelopable, depending on what the developer works out with the Corps of Engineers. We as a city, I think, would advocate to minimize any impact to any final wetland determination areas. We as a city, I don't think, would want to say to the Corps, if they determine this channel to be wetland, I don't think we'd want to say, okay, let's let them fill it in and mitigate, and they can provide wetland establishment elsewhere within the region. Because that sometimes is an option. You can mitigate wetland impacts and relocate and redevelop wetlands in new areas if you disturb or obliterate wetlands in current areas. I don't think that'd be our recommendation as a staff. I don't think the council would necessarily want to lean that way. We would work through that with the Corps of Engineers and see where this determination falls exactly. Now, where I'm going with that is the area they do fill could happen, according to our floodplain regulations, on this developable land, what I'm calling the developable land, that they're primarily showing being developed on their PUD. You know, they're not showing filling in these areas. They are showing the detention pond being graded where this channel is, and that's a concern. But the rest of this is what I would call the high ground that's fairly developable when you look at it in consideration or in comparison with any other land around the lake that's developed. And then along with this area over here, it's more of the higher ground that's all the more easy to fill, all the less likely to impact a wetland. And if they proceed with filling those areas, it's located in an area on our flood protection maps, our flood insurance rate maps that are produced by FEMA, to be within the floodplain. And those areas of the floodplain are fillable by design, according to our flood maps and our floodplain regulations. So, yeah, I don't want to pick out any particular property, but you could go anywhere around the lake, and in order for anybody to build a house or a structure, they have to follow floodplain regulations. Everybody around the lake in the floodplain has to fill their property in order to get a building permit. So that'd be no different than for this private property. They could fill this higher ground. It's designed, the floodplain is designed and the maps are designed such that the impact to the rest of the floodplain would be nominal, because we're following the floodplain regulations established by FEMA, adopted in our city ordinances, just like we would for any other development in a floodplain, whether around the lake or in any other part of the city.
Thank you, Director. The next question is from Mrs. Beasley, but I'm going to pair that with a question from Mr. Crump. Mrs. Beasley asked about regarding the peninsula, isn't that stretching basically the permission granted under a PUD or any zoning? And I will couple that with Mr. Crump's question, isn't that underwater? And if so, isn't that underwater at times? And if so, is that then land and can be used in the PUD qualifications? Councilman Peters, do you want to add anything on
Just one more on top of that, if I could, Director. Is there future plans to develop on the peninsula? Okay.
Okay, thank you. So anyway, is that stretching the rules of the PUD, and is it still allowable to be qualified as land if it's underwater at times?
Well, as to whether it's stretching any rules, I'd only be offering my personal opinion, I guess, if I spoke to that. But what I can say is that everything outlined in turquoise here is privately owned property, owned by the applicant or their partners. And the minimum land size requirement for a PUD is 5 acres. This turquoise outline parcel encompasses just shy of 8 acres. I think it was 7.92 acres. So from that perspective, you know, because they're using land that they're not developing, I think it's personal preference whether you think that's stretching the rules or not. It is part of their privately owned parcel, and it is going towards the area in totality being used for the planned unit development.
I guess I'm just asking from a professional opinion, that's classified as land and therefore part of the 8 acres.
Correct.
Okay, so it
Correct.
qualifies under the rules. If it's flooded regularly, is it then counted as land?
Yeah, and to that point, I would guess the central part of this peninsula is what would regularly flood, and then maybe some areas up in here next to this channel. I don't have a contour map in front of me right now, but if you take out the areas that are flooded, again, it would have to be a calculation at that date and time. But you've got almost 3 acres that we're working with here that they are over and above the minimum PUD size. So I could see you still potentially meeting the minimum 5 acre PUD even under high water situations. Because those high water situations could likely eat up 3 acres. Are they going to eat up more than that?
Okay.
Probably
Yeah,
not.
I think we can get that. Yeah, on that point on that one.
Yeah, Mr. Van Eyck, really, isn't it all about it's not about whether the land is, whether the property is out of water or in water. It's about where the boundaries are in calculation. Isn't it property size, not land versus water size?
Yeah, that's correct.
You know, and the reason why I say that is I own a little piece of land that I've got several acres underwater that I get taxed on, and it's my lot size. So just for that sake, it really doesn't matter whether it's access issue to the point, but not a matter of whether it should or not be. It's all about property size, lot size.
And counsel, I will, if you want to piggyback off of a question that I have, I'm more than welcome to that. I just want to make sure that these questions are asked and answered. And then if you have more at the end, we are going to hear those. So the next question, Councilman Peters, on that peninsula.
On this note, if I could here quick, did you say, Director Von Eye, what the acreage is if you take off the peninsula? You know,
I don't have that
If there's
information.
concern, you know, it sounds like we're 3 acres above what's needed. If the peninsula was taken off or parceled off, would they still meet the 5 acres, I guess is what I'm getting at.
My community development manager is nodding yes, that would be
Okay.
the case.
So to some extent, I mean, that kind of clears up, the peninsula is not needed for the project.
What would that be based on then?
Excuse me, sir, I'm not going to allow questions shouted from the back of the room.
Can I step up?
You can ask your question real quick. Yes, sir. Yep, go ahead. No, come on, step up. Because here's the deal. At the Plan Commission meeting, there was a lot of talk that was never on camera because it was all happening off camera and nobody could hear it. And that's not how we conduct business at the city council level. If you're going to say something, you're going to say it on the record. And that goes for us as well as everyone out there. So, Mr. Crump?
Mr. Mayor, I understand. I watched that just for a point. I watched that from the meeting from home, and there was a disconnect between what was happening at the meeting and what was the voice that I was hearing. And you literally couldn't get in to ask a question.
Yes.
So that's why I decided to attend this one. So just so you understand.
No, and that's good. And then we're in agreement we're not going to replicate that.
Yeah. And nobody could answer that, and I get.
What was the question?
The question's about the landmass.
Yes.
You know, we're just, and we look at somebody and say that does meet the requirement. Well, again, how far out then would you allow somebody else that comes in the next time and says, well, I got a piece of property over here, it's on a little outlet, it's my property, that qualifies 5 acres.
Okay, well, Mr. Crump, we can't deal in hypotheticals and compare hypotheticals to what the proposal is here. You can ask it, because we're talking about the property here. I guess I'm trying to, without dealing with hypotheticals, because, we could come up with all sorts of scenarios hypothetically.
So then do we have a survey of this that says that's 3 acres or 4 acres or 5 acres without it?
Yeah, our land records show exactly how many acres this portion of this whole landmass is. And according to rough calculations in the back of the room, if this were chopped off right here, this should be at or less than 3 acres.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, the next question, I'll ask Mrs. Beasley if I'm understanding it correctly. It was more just a point, but she was making a point that the last time this was brought forward, it was for 6 units, and now they're saying 45 housing units. Now, I will make one exception to that. It was 6 units, but those were apartment buildings, I believe, when it was proposed under CL. But, Mr. Scott, do you want to clarify that?
Yeah, so originally, it was just the first 5, and that was all we knew we wanted to do, really. That's all we know we're going to do so far.
Now, you're talking the 5 lots or the 5 buildings? Because the question, I think, was in comparison of what was proposed under your original CL proposal versus what the PUD is. I believe that's what it is. Yes.
Yeah, so the original CL, we said we were going to build the first of those 5 there's 3 buildings right there, yep. So that was just where we were saying in that one, we know that's what we want to build in the CL. I wanted to keep my options open for the rest of it at that point in time. With the PUD, I believe actually, in my opinion, protects the public because there's a lot more known information. I kind of like to wing it. We had to show everything that would be built on site, so.
Okay, and thank you, and I appreciate that because, and no offense, I actually, Mr. Scott, I know you and I appreciate keeping your options open and winging it, but in the minds of the public who live there, they don't want to take winging it as an answer. I'm just saying, it's like, that's why I believe, that's in large part why they're here, because they just want to know what they're facing. So Director Von Eye, on that, let's say the CL proposal versus 45 housing units here.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The main point I wanted to make to that sometimes gets lost in all the discussion. It's all good discussion, it's all warranted, valid discussion. But the CL zoning district was a blanket zoning district application being proposed. And within that, at the time, the developer said, yes, I'm looking at building these 5 units here. But that's not even a requirement to be stated at the time of that blanket zoning district application. It's no different than applying for a C1, a C2, a C3, an R1, an R2, an R3. All those, what I'm calling blanket zoning districts, they have what are called permitted uses and conditional uses. So even though the developer at the time was saying under a CL, I would build these 5 units, once that CL is approved, they could walk out the door and do whatever they want. They are not obligated or held to anything other than what's in the zoning ordinance. They could have put any one of the permitted uses on here as a CL, or applied through the Board of Adjustment for any one of the conditional uses listed under the CL. And that's the distinctive difference between the CL application and this PUD. This planned unit development, they have to show all their building footprints, all their access points, their internal roadways, their drainage and runoff management, all the structures, all the grading, and along with this map representation, they're also required to provide a written narrative of what the planned unit development includes, which is also, of course, part of the case summary here tonight and was part of the Planning Commission. Point being, at times when we're doing those other rezones for those other standardized zoning districts, we tend to get caught up in the what are they going to do there, when really it should always boil down to what are the permitted and conditional uses allowed. And that's how we should have been looking at the CL, and I think some people were looking at it that way, but unfortunately, others get caught up in some of the details that the developer provides, thinking that's what we can hang our hat on. I want to encourage the council, the Planning Commission, the community to think otherwise. We should not be hanging our hat on any list of things the developer's saying they're going to do at the time of rezone when it comes to those blanket zoning districts. However, with the PUD, that's all they can do. That's specific to this.
Thank you, Director Von Eye. Next question came from Mr. Berg. Who has the responsibility to keep that channel clean?
Currently, I would say that would be the private property owner. There's no drainage easement there that the city would be involved in that, unless it's waters of the state.
If this goes through, who would be responsible?
Yeah.
The property owner?
The property owner.
Okay. And Councilman Tupper?
Now, when you say the property owner, do you mean the existing property or the new property owner or the property owner on the side of the lake? No, you're talking 2 different property owners.
If I understand the concern being the channel, which is solely on the south side, because the culvert discharges, almost immediately into the water body to the north, I think that under my understanding would be just the south side property owner is the one that would be responsible for any maintenance there. Or the other thing I'm not certain of is whether the state would have any involvement in that, as it being a water body of the state. And if they did, would they require the property owner to maintain it, or would they get involved? Those are nuances I'm just not familiar with in this particular case.
Councilman Danforth?
Thank you, Mayor. On that note, it's private property. Is there a requirement? If I owned that property today or umpteen years ago, is there anything that says I have to maintain it? Or is that just kind of a courtesy one has been expected to do, or people wanting them to do?
Yeah, I think we're stretching the bandwidth of my knowledge here, and you're getting into water law or water rights and water bodies of the state and how they would look at this. growing up on a farm, I can tell you if a connection like this occurred between two water bodies, my dad couldn't show up out there and just fill it in and get away with it. He would have some repercussions that he'd have to deal with, whether through U.S. Fish and Wildlife or the Corps of Engineers. I do have a personal experience in that realm, but so I would assume something similar would be the case here because of its significance in connecting these two bodies of water.
Okay. So along those lines, in regards to the culvert and the lines, the connection between Compesca and, well, anyway, the development here. Next question coming from Mr. DeVille. If you make this bigger and you clean the lines, there's more garbage coming through, or was his fear. And I know that you answered some of that in regard to the detention pond would collect a lot, and then you said earlier on that it would actually be cleaner and more controlled. But I want to make sure, from Mr. DeVille's point of view, if you make it bigger, cleaner, more is going to be coming through.
So this is in line with some of the opening statements regarding some of the staff comments, the engineering staff. In order to retain this connectivity, this water channel is not quite as visible with this aerial map, so I apologize, but it generally runs where I'm running my pointer here. In order to retain that connectivity, we question whether this is the optimal location for this pond. If they can design this pond to retain that connectivity is also in question. So those are the things that we've given notice to the developer on, see if they could relocate that pond over to the southerly side of their buildings or other options on the site. Because to Mr. DeVille's point, if this slough is connected through this pond, yes, that would be one of the concerns, that water would influence the water runoff from the site and potentially impact the lake water or the slough water or vice versa.
Right.
So that point is in question and a point of concern to staff on the location of this detention pond and how it is constructed.
All right. There was another question on the Compesca side. I'm going to wait to the end to ask that because that is on a different subject. I'll explain why. The next question also from Mr. DeVille. Not even sure how much of a question it was, but going to try to be very cautious. It was that basically saying that with this proposal, we are not understanding the flooding and the flooding ramifications. Would be more water on both sides of the road was another comment of his. I am not a flood expert, nor do I claim to be. Director Von I know also Community Development Manager Hanton updates the flood maps all the time. Kind of goes to a lot of the questions as far as when you develop it, when you bring in fill, when you clear the channel. Is this actually, I guess let's just bring it up. Is this area going to flood or is it going to flood out the homeowners? I think that's the question. When you boil it all down, I think that's the question.
Yeah.
Are we going to increase flooding out of the people who live nearby?
Yeah, I apologize for chuckling at that. The brevity of the question.
That's what I think it is.
I understand that.
Let's just bring it down to.
I appreciate your bluntness in the question. That's what made me laugh. The answer I would have goes back to the floodplain regulations that we talked about earlier. The fill in this area that could have otherwise taken up some of Toby's Slough water, as Toby's Slough rises in a flood situation, or the lake rises and backfeeds through this culvert, that water's got to go somewhere. It's going to follow the path of least resistance. If this land area is filled, that water will still follow the path of least resistance. If some of it were going to be flowing into this area, it's now going to get redirected into the water body. And if you look at, actually I think this came up in the CL rezone consideration. Because these are connected through that culvert, in theory at a certain elevation, these two water bodies are going to be close to the same elevation. That water dispersed from this land area is going to redistribute itself across a 5,000 acre lake and across however many acre slough this is. And if you think of it that way, it's like throwing a thimble of water into an Olympic-sized pool. It's simply not going to have a substantial impact. Now, as far as localized flooding, that's where our design regulations kick in. The site runoff from this development, we don't want running straight across the street into these neighboring properties. It's got to be graded, and the flow of the water, the direction of the water has got to be directed to an area that's going to mitigate any localized flooding. So those are the two components we look at. A global perspective, is it going to impact Lake Compesca and the slough? I would say absolutely not from a scientific standpoint. I think that the developer's engineer referenced raising the lake less than the thickness of a piece of paper by the water that's displaced by this fill. The localized flooding, just as important, again, I think is mitigated by our development standards to make sure that that water is not directed onto the neighbors.
Director Von, I am going to ask you to do me a favor and continue to give your very professional, very very complete answers, but feel free to just be blunt back to us, because we all know, I think, what's happening here. We have a developer who wants to develop something to make money, and we have homeowners who want to protect the value of their property, and also we have concern about Lake Compesca. So I think we can boil it down to more of the essence. So we can, anyway, I appreciate it very much, but in the sake of time also, because I want council to ask questions as well. Next question from Mr. DeVille. The PUD had a max of 6 people. The sports deal has like 45 units. I could also invite Mr. Scott, because the CL, it's really the difference in this is the difference between the CL, which could have been proposed, which could have been allowed, which we did not know, versus the PUD, what is known. So I'm not even sure what the question is in that, other than, am I reading that right? Which is, the concern, is this increasing the max capacity of people? Or is it holding it neutral? Is it unknown because the previous proposal was CL?
Had the CL been approved, it could have developed much more densely than this, potentially.
That's what I need to know, because then with the apartments, so the previous proposal could have been much more dense.
Could have been, correct.
In regard to these apartments, the question was fire exits. I'll just extend it to any safety regulation, like fire trucks being able to access that road. Speaking of that, Chief, could you turn on the air conditioning? Sorry, Kristen. So I'm just going to say, fire exits, any safety precautions, have they all been taken into consideration?
Yeah, the PUD went through the design review team, which includes the fire department on there.
And there's a question about wildlife. I will just say, I can leave it open. I know that you're not a wildlife expert, and I'm not going to ask any of us to get into the mind of a mother goose to see whether or not she's going to nest there or not. All I can say is there's a lot of places on the golf courses that they would nest that you would never think that they would. So I'm not going to say what impact this has or not, because we don't know. And that's up for wildlife to describe, because a lot of times you develop and you actually get a lot more deer and a lot more geese and a lot more ducks, because it's more of a protected area. We don't know that. Councilman Bueller?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question, if I could, for Community Development Manager Hanton, if she could come up. I know she was hoping she wouldn't have to do this tonight, but.
Is this pertaining to the question that on wildlife, or?
No, this has nothing to do with this stuff at all. No, I'm.
Okay. Well, okay. Is this a new question?
It is. Is that okay?
I just want to make sure that we're asking all the questions from the people in the back. Go ahead, as long as it's on your mind.
I can wait if you want.
No, go ahead, as long as it's on your mind. But I just don't, I would ask the rest of the council to not follow up.
Yeah, don't do what I did. Okay. Thanks, Brandy. The question I have is, when we put together the ordinance for the 50%, I'm assuming, I just want to be clear, we have the 50% undeveloped area for this property. What was the spirit and the intent of having that as a part of one? I know we did on the CL, but what's the spirit and intent of this? Because this is not really contiguous by any stretch to what's being developed. So that's my question. When we develop, we penned that ordinance, Why did we do that? What was the reason, the logic behind that?
Thank you, Councilman Bueller. So I believe that you're referencing the CL district or what they're modeling their PUD off of now. Because the whole premise behind their PUD is that it does model the CL district. And the idea behind the 50% is just to reduce the amount of impervious surface there would be in these areas. Or actually lot coverage.
And Mayor, just a point of clarity, that would not apply to the PUD, correct, Brandy?
They are applying it to their PUD.
I mean, from a regulation standpoint.
No.
Our PUDs do not require 50% maximum coverage. They
Right.
are applying that at their own discretion.
Yes.
Just wanted to make that point of clarity.
Next question came from Mr. DeVille, and essentially, it's like, will the slough be gone? What impact on Toby and Compesca? I will phrase it as, if Mr. DeVille allows me this leniency, are we going to screw up Toby, Slough, and Lake Compesca? I will answer it on a little bit on your behalf because you've already dealt with the water impact. You've already said that it's like adding a piece of paper to it. As far as screwing it up for wildlife or aesthetics, I guess that's up for the council to decide as far as whether or not, because it's not, that is not in your professional gamut to say, your job is just to say professionally and by the law, is this permissible? And it is.
Correct.
Okay. So in regards to that, that's up to the council to decide on your own personal interest. Councilman Danforth, yep.
And I did this properly versus council. I just want to make sure that, I hope I'm understanding this correctly. Let's say that this stays, I believe this is what, R1, I think? Is that
Correct.
Let's say it stays R1, and somebody comes in to get a building permit, and they build their homes out there. Those individuals have the land ownership right as long as they're complying with any regulatory requirements on fill. They could do the same thing from a fill standpoint. The fill issue is not dependent on this being a PUD or CL or R1 lots, because landowner rights say that if it's allowed, they could fill that in. Mr. Van Eye, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so this whole issue and the continuous debate about the fill is a moot point, because it could happen if we don't do this. And so then the question then is maybe we should just take it out of any buildable right and the city buy it and be done with it, or the state buy it. Otherwise, we have to deal with landowner rights. Now, there's a lot of things I disagree with on this scenario and have concerns with. But we keep rehashing this fill issue when it has nothing to do with CL or PUD or R1. It's landowner rights and what's protected and what's not protected. So we kind of can just get over that one because we can't influence that. It's a right people have as long as it's not stopped. So I know we've spent, and I know it's a concern to people, and it's a rightful concern, but we can't do a darn thing about it. 2 cents.
All right. Further on that, Councilman?
Just to kind of echo that, I mean, yes, it's a landowner right, and no matter what we do with it. The problem was back in 2018 or 19 when we annexed this piece of property into the community. It should have probably never been annexed into the community at that time, but there was only one person that opposed it. He's here tonight, Mr. DeVille. Nobody opposed it at that time. Now we've annexed it into the city, and in being we've annexed it into the city, we have to follow our own rules and regulations when it comes to allowing somebody to build. And that's basically what it's boiled down to, and it's been pretty contentious for a number of years what's going to happen with this piece of property. And I think this is the least impactful solution for this piece of property.
All right, thank you. We just have 2 more questions. Mr. Crump asked, if you put fill in, then it affects the study. I'm not exactly sure what study that may be. That would come obviously from the Corps of Engineers, from the state, from the lots of entities. The question is, would the study be done pre-fill, post-fill? Do we know? Is a study required? Let's say that.
Yes,
Okay,
wetland
that's-
determination would be
Yes,
required.
okay. Would that be done pre-fill or post-fill? Or both?
Some fill has been allowed already in an area that was deemed likely to be outside of any wetland determination, and I think that's where the question was stemming from. Outside of the fill in an area that was deemed by staff to be likely outside of a wetland area, no other fill would commence unless, again, it's in an area there's no question then whether it would be a wetland. Staff would not let fill commence in an area that's potentially a wetland, is what I'm getting at.
Okay, then you ask the second part of that question, which is, will the city stop any fill from being brought in? So, because you answered that. The final question from Mr. Crump is, how does this benefit the city? And that is up to the city council to decide. That's not up for Director Von Eye to answer. That's why the city council is here and why we are elected, is to vote if this benefits the city or if it's just abiding by the laws. I will now open for, okay, I actually do want to go back to a question from Mr. DeVille. There is a lot on the other side of the road of South Lake Drive that does touch upon Lake Compesca. I'm going to warn the council about this. So, Director Von Eye, would you point out that property with your mouse?
Eric could confirm, but I believe it's these two smaller buildings. Is that right, Eric?
Had to see if that mouse worked too. So,
Am I in the general vicinity, or do I got to?
oh, you're in the wrong spot.
Okay.
It's over here.
Are you going to the east? I can't see your mouse.
Oh yeah, yep, to the east quite a ways, right across from where the single family home is,
Oh,
right
is it
here.
The heavy treed area here?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. There's two cabins there.
gotcha.
Yeah, that's the area where I personally own some lake frontage. So
Okay, I'm going to just be very clear on this. I think that the people of Watertown deserve to have an open conversation about this, and I think the proponents should be able to stand behind their proposal, and the opponents deserve to know. The question that was brought up at the Plan Commission is if the owner who owns the PUD also owns the land across the street, will that land across the street be basically, will those cabins be torn down, and will there be lake access provided for the people who live at the PUD? The question is however, that is not something we can legally really deal with regarding this PUD. I want to make that very clear. You may ask that, you may wonder about that, but we can't vote on that. That's by law, okay? So, Mr. Scott, I know you probably want to say something, but I'm not going to let you. Because you'll say, oh, I'm not going to do anything, and then the question will be, but what if he does? And I'm not going to go down that road. Because we don't know that. We can't predict that. And that's why we can't vote on it. Okay? So we have to just vote upon the PUD as is. I know that that can be difficult at times because you can touch upon bigger issues, but this is the zoning laws of South Dakota and of Watertown Council. I thank you for letting me go through that. I think that you would all agree with me that the opponents had a lot of concerns, and I wanted everyone to make sure that they knew that their concerns were addressed. But I want to make sure council's concerns are addressed as well. So if you have some, and I just want to make it very clear, this is not the second reading. I'm not asking you how you feel about this project. I'm just asking you, do you want more information so that in a couple weeks you can vote on this project? Councilman Schutte.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, yeah, I've got some questions just to help get to clarify some things on my end and hopefully in the public's eye too. So of course, development, we've got this already set up as an R1, so we were promoted, we went to see, we've set it up to have development there. So, and actually that was my observation that Councilman Danforth had noticed too. It's going to be filled in if it's developed as R1 or if it's developed as this PUD or whatever else down the road if this doesn't pass through. So again, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's just kind of where we're at with this on that portion of it. Thank goodness we've got some parameters in place to keep some low areas like that channel and things like that. So, but questions I do have, contractor shops, so this might be for Mr. Scott possibly to answer. And part of this goes with that one question that was about the vision of Watertown. Does this fit the vision of Watertown? You know, as far as, do we want to see residential? Do we want to see contractor shops? I know to the west of there's some contractor shops. So I guess, just to clarify what the plan is, as I'm looking at it here closer on my computer too, there's going to be contractor shops right along South Lake Drive, would that be correct?
Correct.
And is there going to be some, is there going to be some housing with that at all? Or it says condos, so I guess maybe for me just not understanding.
Yeah, so we're calling them sportsman's condos. That's a little bit of a marketing ploy. But very similar to what was built just west of here. We do want to make sure they look nicer. That's somewhat irrelevant, but they would have the potential to have apartment per the regulations in those.
Right, okay, so basically, yeah, so it's going to be storage sheds.
Yes.
Larger than the average one you'd see around town, like you say, to the west, but with the potential of putting some sort of a living.
Yeah, usually they'll put, like, people will put a loft in them and have, they can have like just a kitchen bedroom, something like that, where they can stay.
Okay, all right, and I appreciate your vision. I mean, that's always welcomed. Then it mentions there's 40, is there 45 units of housing? Is that towards the backside there then, or?
Proposed or shown here is 30 units along the other side, and then the other 15 would be the sportsman's condos. So there's 3 buildings there with 10 each, and that's further explanation. Loft-style concept. It's just the width of about one garage stall, a little bit wider. You pull in, go up to the second floor. Kitchen, living room, bathroom, and you go up another set of stairs to a little loft apartment or a loft bedroom up on the 3rd floor. So they'd be nice little vacation places near the lake with easy to get a boat in, get a boat out. So
Good. I mean, that's a good. I appreciate the vision on that too. That's good. I could see that as being a need for around the lake. I guess again going back to the question of what's the vision for Watertown that maybe we got to work through here as a council in the next 2 weeks is, do we want to see R1? Do we want to see residential, single family units, or do we want to see the contractor shops along South Lake Drive? I guess that's more of a visionary thing for us as a council on that point versus. That's one major point I think for us to decide on this. Would be what the vision is for. Right now, it's for R1, but do we want to see contractor shops? And I guess I'm open. I'm asking the question more from a perspective of I'm open to the conversation. I'm not going to come in here with a natural bent which direction I think it should go. I want to kind of get some good conversation on that particular point. So, thank you, Mr. Scott.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Councilman Danforth.
I got a whole list. If you want, do I go one by one, or where you want me to start?
However you would think it's best.
Okay, because I got some comments and some questions, and some have been answered, and I appreciate that. Is it and staff can maybe help me out here, but back in, I believe it was March, when it went before the Plan Commission for the CL requirement, I believe, was that approved or denied at that time?
It's recommended for, sorry, Mayor.
Recommended for approval, if I recall.
By the Planning Commission by a vote to 5-2, and then denied or rejected unanimously by the council.
Now, I'm sorry. Yes, it was approved though at that point.
So Plan Commission voted for the CL zoning in March. They voted in favor 5-2. They voted against this PUD 5-2, or 4-3. Sorry.
Okay, so here's my question: is I'm trying to figure out the connect as to why it was approved 8 months ago, and by the same body of people that now have rejected it. What's your read on why there is that?
That's speculation.
No, I know
You're
that, but
asking
you
them to
may pick it up
speculate.
on the discussion.
I will say there were different people, there were different members of the body present voting, and that had an impact on the outcome.
7 and 7, Mayor.
But the
5-2
number,
and 4-3.
but there were different people voting. There was 7 votes both times, but there were different people present
People
voting.
representing them.
Yes.
Okay, because that's kind of throws me just for a little bit there, but I had a question on lake lot use, but I won't go there, Mayor, at your insistence. One of the things, Mr. Von Eye, that you said right away at the onset of this thing was that it was 8 acres, 5 required, a comprehensive use plan, but then you used the term plus its unique compatibility. What does that mean in our regard?
I believe the study references that staff put that comment together from, that comment stems from some of the studies they were referencing, whether it be the comprehensive land use plan or the Lake and Pesca master plan, but the uses around the lake being of general compatibility within that region is I think, the point they were trying to make in the staff summary.
And my first observation with that is, I don't see this as being a unique compatibility with what is in this area. I don't see a whole long line of contractor shops along any one of our lake drives. And so I question its unique compatibility.
If I could, Mayor, or if it's, Councilman Danforth, to your point, I think, again, speaking for staff, because I represent them as the director, I believe that would stem from the Lake Compesca master plan, identifying some mixed uses, some higher density uses, some rental type uses, some sportsman type uses. All of those things together lend to the general compatibility of the lake. And not only that, but the success of similar facilities just less than a half-mile west of this location that have been very successful in developing near the lake with sportsman-type shops. So I believe that's where staff came up with that conclusion from their standpoint.
In regards to its location and South Lake Drive, I know Mr. Von Aye, you had said that the amount of traffic that would be predicted to come from this would not trigger a traffic study. In that statement, we're really talking about numbers of cars. And does a traffic study also take into consideration the structure that exists, the infrastructure that's there, meaning the road itself? Because this is just me, if I look at that whole lake, there's one area that's a pinch point around there that's probably one of the worst areas for traffic. Not volumes, but traffic in general, and this is one of them. I go by there all the time, and you have to be very, very, very careful going down there when even when there's snow on the ground, because it narrows up significantly. But in any open water month, the traffic, the parking, the congestion that's down there, and how it pinches, not necessarily to the left side, but to the right, more to the right of what's on the screen, all the way up till you get towards you're going up the hill, is very, very narrow and confined. And I would really question that 45 units is not going to play into that. It may not from a traffic numbers standpoint, but in my opinion, you're going to have an impact on the safety on South Lake Drive. And I would like to say I'm a traffic engineer. I'm not, although I did Google it. Let's see here. The one concern that I also have, and I think it's probably a flaw in our definition of how we use things, meaning the PUD and the 50% coverage on the CL, is we are doing that based on property size and not based on developable property. And I think that is a flaw in our system in how we define things, because this is very, very, very dense. There is almost 3 acres there, if not more, including that whole left side, where the apartments and shops or whatever they all are over there on the left side. There's very little other than what might be on the Toby Slough side that isn't going to be hard surfaced. Percentage-wise, it would far exceed the 50% lot coverage if that was the area that was solely going to be used for in the CL zone. And I know that does not apply in this case, but the flaw is that we are, and we've heard it tonight in some of the considerations here, and that is there might be land areas that just, there's no way they're going to get used in any kind of development, but yet that land area is allowable in determining, in this case, the 5 acres and what's usable. To me, that's problematic. I think this is very, very dense. I question not only the uniqueness of it as it relates to, I think if you look at just the individual purposes, they're probably, okay, I can go with that. But the sheer volume of them and the density of them is not at all unique. Matter of fact, it would be contradictory to what we have around the lake. So that's my 2 cents. Let her go.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Any further questions? More information? Councilman Councilman Jurens, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to add to something that Danforth brought up in his first point.
Councilman Danforth.
Councilman Danforth. I'm so used to saying that. See, I'm not the only one. You're not the only one that did that. So really what I'm looking for is what has changed and what may change in the next 2 weeks that would ask us to override a decision from the Planning Commission. They did change their vote. Did they learn more? Did they hear from more people? I have had more calls and more conversations since the day after I was elected on this topic than anything else. And here's the big question. Why did we choose next to a wetland that's in the floodplain and not down the road where the other contractor sheds are? That's not maybe a question that can be answered by the developer. But I get to ask that to myself, and that's what I've been asked by many, many day-to-day people that I've chatted with on this. So that is one point that I would really like to bring up in what I would call the litmus test. I, like Danforth, have numerous notes. I'm gonna get them down to just a couple. Let's just jump down to the amount of 3 to 5 feet of fill. I was here at the Planning Commission, listened to their engineer, made the comment that was repeated tonight. It's a sheet of paper compared to what the size of Kempeska is. Maybe. I believe that is a sales pitch that feeds into a certain way that maybe we should think about this. But I'll give you another opposing conversation that I've had with some landowners up north. In 3 years, this council will be deciding on, possibly deciding on some flood control for Lake Kempeska. It's going to be about damming up 6,000 acres of land up north. So I was asking a few landowners that have approached me, what should we be doing? And, I believe it comes down to not all factual, but perception. Perception in that if we continue to do this type of development in the wrong areas, what example does that set for future decisions that we'll be making? Tough decisions, to be honest with you. Will it affect flooding? I'm with you, Mike. Residential.
Councilman Danforth.
Yep. Councilman Mike Danforth. It really likely will not affect the flooding, but the perception is strong. The perception of spot zoning, the perception of why in an R1, where we have all residential, would we drop in apartments and 35-foot buildings? That's another question. So those are some issues that I've been wrestling with. I'm going to say this. Hopefully, all of the discussion in the last year, 6 months, 8 months, really really excites someone who would like to purchase this land, Councilman Mike Danforth alluded to this also, that an outside group, a game fish and parks group, no money, a city group, or some group that really wants to preserve this part of our area would be really, really willing to step up and be a part of, so that it doesn't turn into the R1 filling up around a really, really cool area that's left on Lake Compesca. Over to you.
And Councilman Jerns, I apologize if I'm not calling you out. It's a lot of times I can allow for some leniency on first names and things like that because we do get along and we do laugh. When it's a contentious issue, when there are both sides represented out in the public, and I don't believe that there's unanimity on the council, then I do ask for a little bit level of that detachment. So Councilman Peters and Councilman
I'm good, actually. It doesn't bother me when you do that. I'm used to it now.
Thanks.
And like before, like my comment from a few weeks ago, I still like you.
Thanks, Lynn.
I'm not sure if he does
Councilman
like it.
Peters.
Okay, a couple things here. I don't have a lot of notes, but I've been listening to this discussion, and a lot of it seems like it revolves around our PUD and how it's written in policy. I think we're arguing about the peninsula, the acreage. So I would just pose this for the group leading up to our second reading here in a few weeks. If I'm the developer and I'm following the rules that the city has in place, that we put in place, and I'm following them to a T, and I come here and I ask for a PUD following the rules that we put in place, and we vote no, what kind of confusion does that send to the development community? Now, I'm not saying this piece of land is perfect. I'm sitting here scratching my head wondering why it's shaped like that and why it is this way. But what I'm saying is, if I'm Mr. Scott and the gentleman next to him, and I come here following the rules and get criticized and get it's too dense, it's too this, it's too that. I don't disagree with any of that, but our policy might be too vague, is what I'm getting at. And I think it comes down to a policy thing. And I don't disagree that spot zoning is a problem. I think we're going to struggle with spot zoning around the lake forever until we get some better policy put in place. But I just wanted to pose that to the group. What is the alternative? And then Councilman Danforth brought up a great point about the fill. This was zoned R1. So at some point, there was plans to develop this. So now we're having to decide, do we rather have R1 single family, or do we rather have this project? Because it was allegedly going to be developed at some point. So I just posed that to the group leading up to our final discussion here in a few weeks. Is it a project problem, or is it a policy problem? I'll just leave it at that.
Councilman Beeler?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to Councilman Peters' comments, just so we understand that, a PUD is subjective. I mean, it's something that we all need to look at. I mean, it can be all kinds of details throughout that development. So it's very subjective when we bring in a PUD because it doesn't fit into a typical zoning designation. So they say, okay, we'll modify it. We're going to bring it to you folks, the Planning Commission and the council, and then we're going to let you guys look at it and see if this fits. And if we find partials or parts of this that don't fit, we can object to that. We can ask for those changes. So I don't know, honestly, Councilman Peters, if there's an issue with the way we got a PUD set up, the way the ordinance for a PUD, but it is very subjective. That's what it's for. It's for us to analyze and decide whether or not we want to do that. And I'm just going to point out one more thing to Councilman Jerns, and this is for our listening, our audience. You'd mentioned that, we're in a couple years or a few years going to vote on whether or not we're going to dam up some property, and we have not come to that conclusion by any stretch. At this point, we're looking at the core for suggestions. It could come to that, but that is definitely not something solid on the radar at this time for us to, just so everybody, and I get how you can think, because that's the way we looked at it before, but that is not set in stone by any stretch that we're going to dam up anything at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councilman Danforth?
Yeah, Mayor's comment, and I sit by this guy, and he's bigger than I am, and I agree with him for the most part. I think sometimes we got to stand back and take a look at what we have and how we have them written and what's requiring. But the PUD, in my mind, it comes down to just because they conform to the requirements within a PUD doesn't mean that it's the right use for that property, or that it's compatible, and that we automatically ignore what otherwise we use for development standards for transitioning and such, and placement of those things. Well, all of those things have to be considered, not plus the detail of what's going in there. All of those things are what we need to take a look at in regards to a PUD or any rezoning. But the PUD, that's where it's at. This may comply with all standards. Maybe it's determined that it's just not the right use for that property, or maybe it's determined that the compatibility with the neighborhood per se is not correct. And that's not the developer's fault. And I do want to make a comment about not this developer, but any developer. Any property owner, because I had a comment made to me today, and I have before on other issues, but this one in particular. There's a lot of people that are just frustrated that this keeps coming back to the Plan Commission and Board of Adjustments. I kind of heard that tonight a little bit. My thing is those are called property rights, ownership rights. And I can't and won't support any kind of restriction on those rights. The property owner has the right to come and ask us for these things. And the process should be handled. It's a good process. We got good people. We may have different opinions or different thoughts, but this is a property rights opportunity. And Mr. Scott and any investors or anybody, they have the right to come and ask for a change. And this isn't about the city saying, okay, we've heard this 3 times, we're done with it. There's restrictions on how often the same person can come back with the same request. This is different, and that's what the system is set up, and we have to respect that. So I just want to make that comment, because I have heard that on occasions.
Councilman Peters? You're good? Councilman Schutte?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just as I asked earlier, having those 30 or so units would fit. They're not necessarily an R1, but it would fit the idea of having some residential along the lake there that could be used for different uses. So I mean, there's things like that we're looking here on this PUD that we are to consider, right? That's why it's a PUD. I think the system is working. That's why I appreciate these conversations we're having from proponents and opponents. And again, there's some that are, like Councilman Danforth said, moot points on this, if you will, for Phil, which sadly that is what it is, unless we were to, somehow transfer the land to a different type of owner that would keep it as a wetland. I guess, again, for me, it's the contractor shops. Is that a spot where we want to have contractor shops? And that's our right, as Councilman Bueller said here, to properly vet this as a council. And so for me, that's one of the things I'm looking at is this a spot for contractor shops? So again, that's kind of what I'm looking at for me personally.
All right, any further comments or questions? I just want to say one thing. I'm pretty sure I can speak for Councilman Jerns. No one is advocating the city or any other entity take over property. I'm not sure, maybe, but that is not the power of the city, and that's not what we're doing here. So, but maybe it is. I'm not sure. So, but I do want to say thank you to the council and thank you to the people in the public. If it's one thing that I hope that you see is the thoroughness and the care that the council puts into the deliberations on something like this, because we know that it matters to people. So thank you very much. We will have a second hearing in a couple weeks. We're moving on to item H. Wait, nope, sorry. Turn the page. A second reading of an ordinance to supplement the 2023 budget for various departments and projects in state and federal grant appropriations. Finance Officer Bob Zine.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. As stated, this will be the 2023 budget supplement. It's broken down on the ordinance by fund. Everything is pretty much straightforward. Some of the items had been pre-approved by council throughout the year, and this is the time that we take action to supplement the budget. The first part is the ordinance, and then the second one is any of the federal or state grants, and those are kind of considered an automatic. If there's any questions, I can answer them. Thank you.
All right. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance. Motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Comments and questions, council? Any comments, questions? Councilman Shetty?
No.
Okay. Hearing no questions, no comments, I'll just do a voice vote. All those in favor of this ordinance, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item B is a second reading of an ordinance to amend Title 25 Cannabis Regulation and Uses of the ordinances of the City of Watertown, South Dakota related to cannabis license fees. City Attorney Carrico, bring us back to this topic.
Okay, as an attorney, you can't handle a microphone. Okay, so this is actually to simplify our ordinances and as council has discussed in the past, which is just an amendment to refer to resolution of council for setting fees. So that way we don't have to change the ordinance every time we change a fee. And this would be as part of the cannabis ordinance. Any other questions? I can certainly answer them.
Do we need a public hearing? No. We don't need one? Nope.
On a second reading of the ordinance?
Yeah, it's a second reading though. Okay.
Some of them do and some of them don't require it.
Okay, so technically we don't need a second hearing, or we don't need a public hearing. However, I see some people out there in the audience. If you're just fine waiting to see if there's questions addressed to you, but I think that we've gone through this pretty exhaustively a week ago. If you would like to say something tonight that's unique from last week, by all means, I invite you forward. But, yep, City Manager.
If I could, Mayor, this action is simply taking the fee out of the ordinance and putting it into
Yeah, this isn't the
into the
amount.
fee resolution.
Yeah, this isn't
So
the amount. This is just
That'll be
transferring
the
where
next.
it's red.
That'll be the next item.
So you want to hold on for this for a second? But this is, but you would have your chance on the next one, which is actually establishing how much the fees are. This is just where it's red.
Stay right where you're at, right?
Yeah. Okay. So again, this is just changing where it's red. So basically, where you find it. I'll still do a public hearing. Anyone? No. Okay. Close public hearing. Chair will entertain a motion to approve this ordinance. Moved by Councilman Shetty, second by Councilman Danforth. Any discussion on this one, council? Questions, comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve this ordinance. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Now we are on to item 12A, approval of a resolution establishing the fees for city licenses, permits, administration membership, user fees, and other miscellaneous items. Finance Officer Bob Zine.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yes, in front of the council is Resolution 2344. This was discussed, portions of it were discussed during the work session. I will note that the changes that came out of that are in here now. We've got the 25,000 application fee and renewal at 5, and then I did break down the licenses because there was 4 different ones. So just for purposes of discussing, you can see the 4 licenses that would be available. Other than that, there was no other changes. I do want to say under Community Development Division, second to last page, the residential contractor's license, it was toggling back and forth between 75 and 60. It's officially 60 in the resolution. So other than that, questions? Thank you.
Thank you. I will now let testimony on this item If there are members from the public, which there are, just please remind us of your names and who you represent.
Roger Meyer, and representing Dakota Dispensary in Watertown. Sat here last week and we discussed many things. I thought we got off track quite a bit on other license matters in the marijuana business and the cannabis business on it. And I just wanted to clarify what I'm after. I'm after that license fee to get lowered to $5,000, and I'd like $20,000 back that I paid $25,000 for that license already. I tried to get this thing started in October, had very much trouble getting through to anyone to get the process started before I had to pay for the license again. And we've all agreed, I think, that it is too high, and I would agree with the $5,000, but I would like $20,000 back because I just paid it a month ago. This is my license for 2024, going forward for next year. In my eyes, anyway, as a business person. And I think one other person has paid $25,000, and I'd like to see him get $20,000 back. And the third one to pay his fee for 2024 should be $5,000. That's just kind of where I'm at.
Any other public testimony?
Thanks, Mayor. And I would agree. I do not intend on rehashing everything we went over last Monday. The only thing that I would highlight is there was commentary regarding basically the inability for a lot of these businesses to survive. I would echo what Roger requested, that it was our intent to request that the payment that was recently administered be reduced to the $5,000 fee and going forward. To change the fee to $5,000 and to set it for the 2024 payment, as the council has addressed numerous times, pending certain outcomes, you may want to revisit anyway next November or next December. So we would be asking for the current implementation of a $5,000 reduction given the current circumstances. And I would like to just highlight a couple comments, because I would agree with Roger that oftentimes I feel as though these discussions got off topic. We were talking about duality of licenses, proposed bills in the House, and certain other speculations regarding this industry. I'd like to throw a comment, Mayor, that you included on that PUD discussion. That's, we can't deal in hypotheticals. We are here to address what the current situation is, what the current market allows, and the current market allows 1% approximately of people to address these or to access these dispensaries. And so with that, we're asking for the council's assistance in allowing these dispensaries and this pharmaceutical industry to continue throughout the 2024 year versus facing, again, another year of the hardship of a $25,000 license. That'd be all.
All right, thank you. Is there any further testimony?
Dan Fierstead here. I represent the Lions Den here in town. Obviously, I'm on board with Mitch and Roger here, and when I got into this, we obviously knew it was going to be $25,000. That's the way it went. We paid when we first got our licenses. I've been open now since January 2nd of 2023. I've paid 3 times already now at $75,000. So I know once you guys get that money in your hand, you're not wanting it back. And obviously we wanted to keep our license and not, lose them. So we paid up. And yeah, but that is weird, paying on December 1st of 2023, and we're actually paying for 2024. So it would, obviously help a lot. I mean, $25,000 is a lot for a small business, and I just hope you guys can help us out with that. That's all.
Thank you. I just want to make one thing clear. That person with Mr. Meyer was Mitch. So, any further testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Chairman, members of the council. I'm not here so much, I certainly am not here to talk about marijuana. I've spent the last 6 years in legislature talking a lot about marijuana. But I'm really here to talk
I'm sorry,
to you
Nancy,
about.
did you identify yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, Nancy York. I'm really here to talk to you about the integrity of the decisions that you make. These gentlemen that have just testified, now they've lost complete faith in the decisions that you made when they got their licenses. There was a lot of other people in town, I understand, from phone calls that I've been having, that would have applied had they known the fee was going to be less. When I got to tell you, when I heard $25,000, I thought that's outrageous. But that was a decision that you made. That was in the contract that these folks signed. And now they feel like that's too big. Maybe you should have talked those things over before so that when you came to your final decision, it was a final decision. Because when you once start vacillating on a decision you made, then you're making all sorts of issues. And so that's really the point that I came to you to talk about. And I know you've been at this for a long time, so I'm going to be very brief. But I just want to, the council here is very important. I served 17 years on this council and 6 years in the South Dakota legislature. Those decisions are very, very important to the community. They trust you. They've trusted you to make a decision that you're going to stay by and be fair to all the people, to everybody. Now, if you're going to open it up for more applications when you lower the fee, at least then those people that felt like they didn't get a chance before because they didn't have as much money, now maybe they want to apply. That's the kind of muddy waters that you've created by doing this. So I just want to encourage you to think about your decisions before you make that final decision, because people are relying on you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Any further testimony? Okay, I'll close public hearing. I'll open it up for a motion to approve the resolution. Motion made by Councilman Danforth, seconded by Councilman Jurens. Open it up for questions and comments. Council? Councilman Peters?
If I could, with Ms. York's comments, so am I understanding this correctly? If we reduce the fees, we're not barring anybody else from applying, correct? There's 3, so there's no more that are available to come and apply.
We have 3 dispensary licenses.
Yes.
Okay. So no more would be able to come to apply. Okay.
And the application fee is, the initial application fee is still $25,000.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's staying the same that it was. This is just renewal fee. Any further questions or comments? Yes, Councilman Danforth.
I know there was some discussion in the last meeting we had, I think it was a work session, is that correct, that we had on this? A lot of discussion, there's a lot of good ones, and Ms. York today makes a very valid point from some aspects. But there was so much we did not know then. That we know at least some of that now. So we didn't know where it was heading, and really that was kind of coming down, really, Nancy, I'm going to blame you out of Pier if she's still here. There was more out of Pier that we just didn't know, and so we had to work with what we had, and so we got where we are. And I'm not one either to sit here and say, okay, we're going to waffle on this and change without justification. I think we know more now, and I do think when we see a problem or recognize a problem, I think we have an obligation to try to fix the problem. And I think that's where our consideration is. However this ends up, I think that's what our consideration is. Where do we feel it's at today? I do think in the work session, it was also asked for us to reduce the various fees related to production and cultivation. I believe today we're suggesting that stays the same. Is that correct? Okay. And I fully support that. But I will say this. I think what we should do, I think it'd be a good topic for us to have a discussion of a work session specific to that. Not wandering all over the place, but specific to those items. Councilman Bueller and I had a 45-minute discussion day on a couple items on tonight's agenda just to kind of get some input from each other. And to be honest, we were kind of like all over the board. Well, what about this? What about it? So there's really a lot of different feelings that I have on this thing. And I'd like the opportunity to have it more honed in and to see if there's merit. You know, we're setting the excuse me, the fee structure tonight, but I'd like to have that conversation. I'm comfortable where we're at when it comes to the dispensaries with what we know today. I really would like a more pointed discussion related to the other topics of growing and processing to see if there's merit, to get other input from people. Because I did hear some really good questions and comments today in just that 45-minute conversation. So whatever we do here, I would ask Mayor and City Manager Mack to consider, and we need to do it sooner than later, because that, we want to get to that so that if there is interest in either one of those or both of those, that people know where they stand. So that's my suggestion. I agree with where we're at today with what's being proposed. I'd like to see a work session on that topic specific.
Councilman Tupper?
This would be more for you gentlemen. How many grow facility or cultivation, whatever you want to call them, how many facilities are in the state? Any one of you?
I don't believe I can give you an exact number. I visited probably about 24.
Okay, so there is.
There's quite a few.
And the reason for my question was, and I didn't know if there was one or if there was two or.
There's multitudes.
Okay, because the one that just burned down the other day would make a huge effect on your business if that was the only one around. So that's, I guess, what I was getting at, so.
Councilman Beeler?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. I recall it when we did discuss this originally, when we talked about setting these fees. You know, there were a lot of things that we didn't know. We didn't know what was going to happen with recreational at that time. It was a ballot issue, and so we didn't know what the outcome was going to be for that. We did have our law enforcement folks and some other folks tell us that we should probably start out a little bit on the high side to hopefully recoup some costs, perhaps due to social issues and law enforcement issues. And I think that followed more in line with recreational marijuana. But we made it clear that we were going to revisit this. It wasn't like we were going to say, this is it, we're staying with it. I remember the conversations. We were going to revisit this and look at maybe making adjustments. Well, personally, I felt from day one that we were too high, especially with $25,000 on the additional, on the renewal fees. To me, I thought $5,000 was a fair price. So, and we do have three. We only have 3 licenses available. They're taken. So I don't think there's any issue with anybody else having to, or that was blocked out from this thing. Everybody knew going into this what it was going to be. But also, I do have some concern, and I do have, I do kind of feel for you folks that are having to pay if we go this route, $5,000 renewal, I feel for you for the fact that if you already paid another $25,000, you know, I don't know how we do that or if we can do that. I'll ask the city manager, can we credit that if we feel that's the right thing to do?
And we were going to address that, but I'll let city manager answer that.
Thank you, Mayor. You'd have to take a separate action. We'd have to put it on a different agenda if you were going to consider rebating or refunding any portion of fees that have been paid.
Yeah, I kind of figured that would be the case.
It wouldn't be part of the action tonight.
Right. And I also want to say that I agree 100% with Mike, or Councilman Mike Danforth. Sorry, Mayor. Oh, yeah. You can teach an old dog. No, I do agree with that. The fact that that we do need to revisit this as far as the other two go, the cultivation and the processing. I think those two issues need to be looked at carefully. This is pretty important how we deal with this. You know, I don't think anybody on this council's taking this lightly, but you know, I don't think we need to be punitive. We're trying to have folks that can be successful in business moving forward. So I think we really got to be cautious about how we handle this and kind of work hopefully to their best interest. Thank you.
City Manager Mack, did you have something to say about that?
Well, there's 4 types of licenses related to cannabis, just for clarity.
Was that it?
That was it, sorry.
And as far as any refund, that's not on the topic for tonight. That would need a separate
Yeah, I would need some
agenda
direction
item and
from
all of that
council to
stuff.
put that on the agenda.
Councilman Beeler?
No, my comment is this. I think that's definitely something we need to look at. That makes sense to me, especially if we go to the renewal of $5,000, if that's the direction we go.
Any further questions, comments? Councilman Shetty?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, this is one too that I've been wavering, just listening, and again, like we try to do, right, is listen to the conversation, listen to the points being made. What type of information we base the decision off of? And yes, early on, 2 years ago, there were it was a challenging decision back then, and as it is today, and as per Mrs. York and her comments, and that's a good point too, as far as when we make a decision, what's the repercussions down the road when we change the decision. That said, as I stated at the work session, reviewing this is fine and seeing what number to land on. I was surprised that we went from 25,000 to 5,000 just like that. I had mentioned at the work session that I guess I wasn't at that point going down to 5,000. One thing that the number of dispensaries having a limit of 3 does bring value to those who are holding those licenses. That is a point that, as I'm listening, realizing that because if we were to go to 5,000, is there any, I think it's been mentioned, do we go to unlimited? And then we just have unlimited dispensaries around town. Well, now all of a sudden, you got to wonder, is there more value in paying a little more money? 20,000, 15, whatever number we'd come down to, and keep it at 3, or do we go $5,000 and just make unlimited dispensaries in town? So, I mean, that is, I think, a valid, I guess it's for us, I guess it's not really that we're not there to make the business decision on the other side, but for us, do we want 3 or do we want unlimited? That was part of our discussion back, a couple years ago, and that's where we came down to having just 3 dispensaries, no more than 3. So that's still, I got a feeling that may be part of this conversation moving forward if we're going to change it to 5 per, again, Mrs. York comments, well, then there might be others that were like, hold on, we would have done this if we'd have had $5,000 amount as the, when we go to renew. So I guess those are the points that I'm listening to, and yeah, I guess per that, I'm not for it because I'm not going down to $5,000 personally, but that's just where I'm at currently, so.
Councilman Tupper?
City Finance Officer Bob Zine, when were these licenses due? They weren't all at the same time, correct?
So we had one renew in August and the last 2 renewed in December.
Okay, so my question is, how do we, I guess that's not that many months apart, but how do we do that fairly? I mean, do you do it fairly with?
I guess, yeah,
Awesome.
so the one that paid in August, does that go from August to August?
Correct.
And
That's what I'm getting at, so.
Okay, and then also, and the other thing, all 3 have paid?
All 3 have paid.
Okay. Councilman Peters, did you have something to add on to that question?
Somewhat more along the lines of Councilman Shetty.
Okay, well, but I want to let Councilman Tupper pursue his.
Can I just provide a point
City
of
Manager Mack.
clarity? When this was brought up during the work session, our license renewals are tied to when they're renewed through the state. So if we were to say all of our licenses renew in January, that puts us in an odd situation if they're renewing annually through the state at different times of the year. That's why they are when they are. So the licenses that we issue, like, like our taxi cab licenses, those come throughout the year. And they're if you get your taxi cab license in August, it renews in January. But we don't get to do that with these. Go ahead.
Councilman Peters?
I just armbarred my fellow councilman here. So a couple of questions along the lines of Councilman Shetty. So let's say we do vote this thing to $5,000. And then we have more people, to Ms. York's comments, come and say, well, if it's $5,000, I want to play in this thing. Do we have, as a council, the discretion to number as many dispensaries as we want in the community? Is that our authority, or whose authority does that lie with?
Yes, that's ours.
It is ours, okay.
But we would have to take action to change the number allowed. Yeah, because we set the number at 3.
So I guess I say this because that was a great point by Councilman Shetty. If we do reduce this to $5,000, you know, what are the, for the cost of doing business, what does that do? Does it flood the market? I mean, it's more of a rhetorical question, but it's certainly something to think about.
Councilman Beeler?
Councilman Peters, are you saying that $5,000 to buy in to get a license to begin with? Because if we did, right now, it's 25 grand if you want to get into the business.
Right.
What we're looking at is lowering it to $5,000 for renewals. It's not for new people coming in. Is that what you understand?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was saying.
All right.
Councilman Danforth?
I can understand. I've been around the block with city issues for a long, long time, and the fees issue we handle every year. To my recollection, we've never had anything that even resembles this kind of a fee and this kind of a drop in a fee. And rarely do the fees drop. I think that this step is probably an anomaly. It's maybe more of a correction now that we maybe understand more than what we did a couple years ago, whatever that is. I still, and depending on how things go, I still would like us to have further discussion and some consideration for a proration of the fees. And I don't think that has to be tied to when a person comes in and they get approved by the state. Because I think that that's a separate issue. I think because we're talking about sizable dollars here in comparison to any of the other business-related fees that are on our fees list, this is, it's significant in regards to your ability to make money or to operate. Now, that may change with if and when recreational marijuana comes in, but today, it's very sizable. I think it could be fairly set up under a prorated basis. In other words, if you operate in 2023, whatever months you're in, it's prorated. Our monthly fee rate is this. So if you come in and it's 4 months, you pay 4 months at that. And then when the new fee schedule comes out for January 1, 2024, it equates to so much prorated to a month. And that's what, so if you come in, you pay the whole year, but if you come in December, you don't pay, if it's the same rate, it doesn't matter. When we're dropping from 25 to 5, it does matter. And I think there should be some more discussion on that. I think it alleviates some of the problems we're seeing and the questions that they're asking us to do right now. It puts everybody on the same playing field in that regard. So I would highly encourage us to take a look at it to see if that is maybe a direction that would work and would be fair for the those that are trying to serve that need within the community, business-wise.
I'll comment just because I'm going to enter the debate as a fellow councilman here, not just as mayor running the meeting. So just as a fellow councilman, I'm going to express my opinion, which largely echoes Councilman Shetty's, which is when we were debating this, the idea was supply-side economics, supply and demand. If you limit the supply, that gains, it has more value if you make it more scarce. So by limiting the number of licenses, we thought that those licenses then had more value. And we had long discussions, do you go unlimited? Do you lower it? Do you lower it as a renewal fee? And we thought, well, if you limit it at 3, then probably they make money because there's a limited number of competitors that can sell. And I'll still stick with that because the scarcity has value, because then we do open up, if we lower it right now, we do open it up for a lot of questions, because then do we start allowing unlimited dispensary licenses? Do we, I mean, we haven't even addressed the cultivation and the is it refinement? Whatever it is, the two other aspects. Yeah. Because if we lower the dispensary license, we're going to have to lower the cultivation and the others, I would think. And then do we go unlimited? Because I do think that there would be many more applicants coming in if they knew that the renewal fee was less. And if that is the case, then the initial license becomes worth less. And that's just law of supply and demand. So I am concerned about that. And this is not dissimilar to some of the conversations that we've had on other things. Like I remember a conversation on taxi cabs, because we went from one legal taxi cab company to many. And we had to change all of our ordinances just on taxi cabs. And to think that we can just magically change medical marijuana without having repercussions when we went through taxi cabs like 4 meetings, I would think that we should be a little bit more cautious in this. And then you have all these other things like liquor licenses. I was even thinking like the airlines, because we have one carrier now. If we had 2 carriers, that all of a sudden becomes worth a lot less of a value because you either have a monopoly or you have competition. And so anyway, I'm just very cautious about this. I'm not closed off to opening it back up but it comes with a lot of caution, because I do think that if we start lowering the fee, then we do have to start talking about reimbursing money. And that is a pretty dangerous topic to undergo, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of the entire council on that. So, and that's also kind of hypothetical, so I'm not going to go down that road. But because if we open this up, we don't know where it ends. So I'm going to vote no for that reason. Councilman Tupper?
The item on the agenda tonight is basically to reset the yearly fees. That's the only thing that's on the agenda tonight. And with the lack of calling the question, I think we need to vote on what is on the agenda tonight. And I would make that motion. Or was that made already?
It was made. Okay, so the thing is, what was proposed was the fee structure as proposed, which is a $5,000 renewal. Okay, so I'm just going to do this as a councilman, so I hope you understand what I'm trying to do. I can call for it as well. I'm going to make a substitute proposal, which is to basically take out the renewal fee for medical dispensaries and return it back to the $25,000, and then vote on the fee renewal structure with that amended. Now, I don't think that I have the votes, but I'm just saying, because here's the deal. The only thing at question here in this fee renewal structure is the medical marijuana dispensaries. And that's the only thing that we're debating. So if you vote for the fee structure as is, all these other things, which you probably agree with, you're either voting yes or no. And as of now, I would vote no against it simply because of the one item. But my recourse here is to amend to change the dispensary license fee. Now, again, I'm just going to make that motion as a sitting councilman. I hope that you understand why I'm doing that. If there's no second, that's great. If no one votes for it, that's fine too. But I just need to do that for my own sake.
I'll second that.
Okay. The motion, we're just talking about the amendment, which is to return the medical marijuana dispensary renewal fee back to $25,000. So, Councilman Schutte, this is just on the amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate, this isn't even about really if we're for it or against it. This is about not having that conversation and voting down an entire fee structure for the entire city based off of one item, right?
Yeah.
Is why you're doing it this way, and then have another discussion. So I understand it.
Councilman Beeler?
Mayor, question if I might. You're saying return it. We haven't really changed it yet. So how would we return it?
It's presented.
It's represented in this proposal.
Okay.
What was proposed is the $5,000 renewal.
Thanks.
Any further talk on the amendment?
Yeah, then are we coming back to?
Yeah, then we would return back, regardless of the outcome on the amendment vote, we return back to the fee renewal as is, or yeah, with whether it's modified or not. So, any further conversation on the amendment? So, just to be very clear, the amendment would return the renewal fee for medical marijuana dispensaries back to $25,000 a year. All those in favor will say aye, opposed say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Shetty?
Aye.
Pepper?
Aye.
Bueller? Danforth?
Nay.
Helene?
Aye.
Jurens?
Nay.
Peters?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion
The-
carries.
We are now on the fee renewal structure as amended. Any conversation on that? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the fee renewal structure as amended. All those in favor will say aye, opposed say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll. And actually, I want to open it up for any further comments after that amendment, because there's some people in the audience here who kind of want to know what's going to happen going forward. And I would like to say Councilman Danforth's request for a work session to get our heads around this is totally called for and probably needs to be done, because unless we're all very comfortable with the decision we're making tonight, that this is going to be it for the future years, which I'm not sure any of us are totally comfortable with. We're just not quite comfortable with what's happening right now. And I'm just speaking for myself. I just want to open it up because, we have some good people here who are trying to run a business, and we're respectful of that. And we're trying to make a decision at a slice in time based on what we have. So I apologize. I'm just trying to do what's best. So Councilman Bueller, you had something?
Thanks, Mayor. Mike, am I to understand that you were looking at testing and cultivation and processing? Is that correct? You weren't looking at dispensaries. You were talking about having a work session to address those three areas, not.
There's only two.
Well.
No, there's two. There's two.
Well, there's testing too, is one I know that we.
But there's not a license for testing, is there? A separate one?
There are 4 separate licenses.
Tried to tell you that.
There are
today.
4 licenses.
Okay.
Yes.
So I didn't see that on the fees list, but maybe I just missed it.
But is that not what you were?
Well, all I'm saying is, because there was some discussion at the work session that we had, that the other ones should follow what we're doing here. And in fact, the recommendation was by some of in the public that the actual fee gets reduced if you're already a license holder, for an example, a medical marijuana one. So all I'm saying is, whatever we voted on tonight, let's vote on the fee specific to the renewal of the medical marijuana. Leave the other ones alone, and then so we can have some discussion on that. I don't want to jump into making some decisions on some of the stuff without having good discussions. I don't know a heck of a lot about this kind of stuff, but I learn quickly. So I want to have that discussion. Discussion is good. And I'm a very, very firm believer that if we are going to have fees and or renewal fees, there's got to be a reason for it.
Right.
Not just because we can. And I don't care whether you're processing corn or you're processing marijuana. There's got to be a rhyme and reason as to what we're doing and why. And I would like to have other people's minds on that and their thoughts on that, so that I can then look at this and say, are we, as a community, are we where we want to be on this information? We took the stance that we're gonna walk before we run, and I still believe that was the right thing to do. Now, well, we're trotting right now, so we got to figure it out. So that's where we're at right now. The vote we're going to take now may or may not put the whole fee list down, right? if somebody's not in agreement. So we'll have to figure out what happens if that happens. So, excuse me. So does that answer your question, Mr. Bueller?
I'm not sure.
I'm saying leave it alone, address it later, and that's the discussion you have later.
No, but I'm talking about just specifically looking at dispensaries tonight. Are you talking about the other things outside of dispensaries that you want to have this work session on? Because that's what I thought we discussed earlier.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's what I wanted to be clear on. Thank you.
Finance Officer Bob Zine, you had something?
So I understand the need for the discussion. The only thing I will point out is with the way the ordinance reads and how we changed it now, you will have to establish a fee currently, because if somebody would show up at the front desk in finance, the ordinance breaks down each one of these licenses, and now we just changed the ordinance. It says it's reflected in the fee schedule. So I think what Councilman Danforth, if you're saying to not keep them in here, that kind of puts finance in a bind.
May I clarify, Mayor?
Yeah, Councilman.
Not knowing where this discussion was going to go tonight, okay? Because on the fee list, it breaks it down now by all different license types, correct? Before it did not, correct? It just listed as cannabis.
Yep. Correct.
Is that correct? Okay, the discussion we had publicly before, and some of those things could have entered into proposals, amendments tonight on lowering or changing fees. And what I'm suggesting is, if that were to have happened, leave it alone, let's have the discussion and come back to it once we've had good discussion on it. Let's not get to that point of considering for those other items that really aren't into play today anyway, there's no licenses out there. Let's have the discussion so we know where we're gonna be at if and when somebody comes to us requesting those licenses. That's all I'm saying. Leave whatever's on the list now. To me, the only question is renewal. Leave everything else alone. Let's come back to it after a good, healthy discussion, community input. That's what my suggestion was. Does that make sense?
City Manager Mack?
So you leave the list alone, other than,
I'm a little confused. I just want to make sure, so the renewal for dispensary licenses, you all are moving that back to 25,000?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Shetty?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. So yes, so now what we're going to vote on is to pass the fee schedule as is with the 25,000,
Yes.
right? And then we'll, another day, have to revisit the 5,000 because it's not on the agenda.
No, we would revisit the entire medical marijuana.
Oh, okay, I'm going to say, because it's not on the agenda to do just medical marijuana, but we would revisit the fee.
We would basically open it up for anything
Any
related to
single
medical
item
marijuana.
or
That includes cultivation, refinement, the number of initial licenses. It would also, I would assure you that it would also branch out into reimbursing. If we increase the number or decrease the cost, it would probably open it up to reimbursement of the people who currently own licenses. It's a large conversation.
So right now, it's just to approve the fee schedule as is, and
Yep.
then we can revisit it. Okay.
As amended. Councilman Peters?
So if we move forward with the fee schedule as is, can we at a later time reduce the $25,000 fee to $5,000 renewal fee?
Yes. We would just bring it forward under a separate act of
Be a
business.
separate action.
Okay.
Which arguably, it probably should be its own, I mean, for our sake, to have it as part of this fee schedule, this is just by structure, this is what we have to do by law. It deserves its own hearing.
So if I could follow up, I was voting under the assumption we were moving it back so we could have a work session to discuss. But from what I'm hearing now, the work session to discuss is not for medicinal, it's for everything but. So there was some confusion there, I think.
No, it would be for medicinal as well. Yeah, it would be everything related. Okay, Councilman Danforth?
I'm going to speak to you as a council person because you've labeled yourself that.
Yes.
Labeled yourself. I think, that, guys, we need to make our decision. We've had a lot of discussion about the medical marijuana. We haven't had much, and now we've got some background with the medical marijuana, right, with the dispensaries. So we have some feeling there. We haven't when it comes to those other license types and what is right or wrong there. Because there's a lot of good discussion, I think, that needs to go into that scenario as that relates. We know where we're at with the medical marijuana thing. You either believe it should be higher or believe it's lower. There's what other discussion is there? The other thing well, I'm not going there. There are some decisions that we may have in the future that are they connected or aren't they when it comes to fee structures? That suggestion was made. So I'm saying we know. I'm not sure what other discussion we're going to have on medical marijuana. If we lower them, maybe the discussion then is, do we open it? Do we open it up? Okay, well, that's an ordinance change. So there's a cause and effect to some of this, if that discussion. So if it's going to be on those types of issues, then fine. It's really the ramifications of either not or going ahead with a change in lowering it. If we don't change them and it stays the same, 25, what discussion is there other than talk about the dollars? Because I can't imagine we're going to get support to open it up unlimited and staying at 25,000 renewal. The justification for that is some lowering. So I think we're kind of where I feel like I'm a pickleball going all over the place here, where I think we know what we want. You either believe that it's too high or you don't. And if we don't, then it is what it is. If we think it's too high, there may be some ramifications that come from that in that discussion, Mayor.
Okay, Councilman, what I'm going to do is, I'll preempt you for a second, Councilman Jerns, but I will let you speak. I'm going to put my mayor hat back on. In the issue of fairness, might want to tell Dan to come back, I don't know. In the issue of fairness, I never want, same thing with the Toby Slough thing, I never want anyone to accuse me that I'm pushing something through. Now, I could play games here and I could push this to a vote right now because we already amended it, but I don't think that's the will of the council. I want to make it very clear that everyone understands what the ramifications of the vote would be as amended. So I will let Councilman Jerns speak, but then I'm going to make something clear to the council and then ask if someone does want to do a motion to reconsider the amendment or just another, that would be a motion to reconsider because you can't do a second amendment to take away the First Amendment. Councilman Jerns?
Are we going to make a motion to lower the renewal fee for medical marijuana dispensaries from $25,000 to $5,000 when we're done messing around here?
The lowering the renewal fee was what was in the original agenda item to 5,000. The original agenda item had it at 5,000. My amendment raised it back up to 25,000. Now, I believe that there was some confusion as to whether or not that would automatically trigger a work session. It does not automatically trigger it, nor does it automatically trigger any conversation about any other aspect of medical marijuana. And that's why I want to make it very clear that I don't want anyone voting to think that it's, you know, we're not all done yet or we are all done yet. So in the original item, it was listed, the renewal fee was $5,000. The amended version is $25,000, taking it back to what it was prior to the first hearing. So if you want a motion to reconsider, you can. And the motion to reconsider would be to take the amendment away and take it back to 5,000, which is the original proposal. I can clarify that.
I believe there's some confusion here.
Okay.
And I believe that we were having that vote, I voted no anyway, so that we could consider different language, taking it and have a real vote on the $5,000 renewal fee for medical marijuana. I'm with Danforth, Councilman Danforth, how much more discussion, how much more churning, how many more times are we going to kick things around when there's likely a decision that could be made tonight on us lowering this fee from 25 to 5? I would like to see that vote taken.
And I just want to make it clear, we had that vote.
Am
We
I-
did, as amended. That was the amendment, was to, do you want it at 25,000 or do you want it at 5,000? That was what the amendment was. But, Councilman Peters?
Just maybe make things clear here. I would make a motion to reconsider the vote that we took and move the fee from the renewal fee from 25,000 down to 5,000.
Okay.
And make that vote tonight, which would be effective January 1st.
Okay, so I want to make it very clear, and I want to make it clear to Mr. Meyer and Mr. Kane, too, that I could have just pushed this vote through as amended, but I want to be, I'm more concerned.
You need a second.
Okay, we need a second here. Second. Moved by Councilman Peters, seconded by Councilman Beeler. If it's just telling us how stupid we are, I don't want to hear it.
Are you the only one who gets to speak here, sir?
Actually, the public hearing has been, Mr. Meyer, I would call you out, if you said that to any of my councilmen, I would call you out because that is attacking language and.
You're attacking us. You're an
Mr. Meyer.
you're an anti-marijuana person.
Mr. Meyer, you're out of order.
The people of the state of South Dakota voted for this.
Mr. Meyer, you're out of order.
And you're on your own agenda.
Mr. Meyer, if I were on my own agenda, I could have pushed this vote through at the $25,000. No, Mr. Meyer, we are reconsidering that vote right now.
If I can make a comment briefly.
Mr. Kane?
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, what I would like to say is you guys are trying to battle this idea of whether the concerns with reimbursement or the concerns with the value of the license. I just want to hit on a handful of those things. The license are non-transferable. So I understand that by limiting it to 3, there's a conception that there's a value to the license. But in order, when we're talking economics, you have to have supply and demand. Right now, there's no demand because there's such a limited amount of people using this product, industry, what have you.
Mr. Kane, I'm going to just ask you to be pertinent to the amendment, I guess.
With respect to the $25,000,
Yeah.
going back to
I
the
mean, and I know you're
25,000.
touching on it, yeah.
I mean, my couple things were, the second thing that this council addressed when you were a couple years ago was the social concerns, and we thought that was going to be with respect to recreational and et cetera, et cetera. I believe Chief Toomey testified on Monday that they've had 8 cannabis-related DUIs in the year 2023. And we were unsure how many of those stemmed from the use of medical marijuana versus recreational. Pursuant to the council's fees, that's effectively the difference between 25,000 and 5,000. That's essentially $60,000 allocated to 8 cannabis-related DUIs. And I understand that there's probably other reasons that the licensing fee was increased or the renewal.
Mr. Kane, you're rehashing public testimony on this. I mean, and we've heard these arguments before. I'm just saying we've heard it before at some point, as all of the council has said, it's time for us to vote. Now, we had a vote. It obviously didn't, the initial vote did not go, let's say, your way, but then there was some confusion up here. And I just want to make it sure for the council. I'm defending the council here because I want to make sure that they knew what they were voting for. And I think that there might have been some confusion. Now, what Mr. Meyer says is I'm pushing my own agenda. If I was, this would already be over and we'd be on to the next agenda item because I could have done that. But I believe that there was confusion, and I'm not going to have a law that affects people's business and a pretty contentious issue in the community. I'm not going to push it through on my own agenda. And I hope that people can see that. So so if you have something
then I have
new and unique, but you're rehashing I mean, and they're good points. That's why I think that the council is willing to lower the fee. But Councilman Tupper?
One of my
Actually, can I get a second on the motion to reconsider?
You got a second on
Okay,
it, yep.
Councilman Beeler.
I think part of the confusion in this all started with and I'm sure I'm not the only council person that received this email and a text also, that at this time we should take up the cultivation licenses and we shouldn't allow, the fees for $25,000, for $75,000 for all 3 licenses. Now we're throwing the whole thing in a hat. And I know that totally confused me. That comes up, not you, not blaming you, that comes on the group that's trying to get the license lowered. So now I got to look at 4 different licenses where really the only issue was the renewal fee on your license, dispensary license. And to walk into the council meeting tonight and say, I want my money back, that's uncalled for. That's a disrespect for each and every one of us up here. And I'm not going to stand for that.
Councilman Peters?
I would just make some final comments and then I'll be done for the rest of the night, I promise. But I want to defend our mayor and our staff. They put a great deal of time into this. And this discussion is focused on lowering fees for businesses in Watertown. We're not talking about raising fees from $25,000, anything above that. We're talking about putting fees in place that we think make sense. A good point was brought up earlier in the day. Well, housing is so important. Why don't we lower the building fees? We are making these decisions based on not just your business, but other ones that we affect. We can't go in any certain industry and say we're gonna lower fees is what we're gonna do, because that sets a false precedent for everything else that we do. So I hope you guys can appreciate the mayor's work, the staff's work, and we're up here. It might seem a little bit unorganized, but we're up here trying to do the right thing for you guys. We appreciate your business in Watertown, and if you don't think that us making some movements to lower fees isn't an appreciation for you guys, I don't know what to do. We're up here trying to do the right thing. So please grant us some courteous, we're doing our best here, and we'll get through this tonight and we'll get some order, but I do want to defend the mayor, and I misvoted because I was confused. So I apologize for that. And once again, thank you, mayor and staff, for all the work.
And Mr. Meyer, I want to make something clear. We've known each other for a while, and I think that we've always been very cordial. I remember having a conversation with you years ago when a different council changed an aspect of the liquor laws when you had a liquor license, and I told you that I would protect your liquor license. I feel to a certain extent I'm trying to protect your medical marijuana license right now by keeping the integrity of the $25,000. I know you might disagree with me, but I'm trying to protect the integrity of the initial license. And that's what I was trying to do. Now, I also hope that you can understand that I didn't need to open this back up for discussion. Okay, we could have just pushed it through, but there was some confusion, and I want to make sure that everyone understands it. So I'll just boil it down. We got a motion to reconsider. What this boils down to is if you want the renewal fee at $5,000, you're going to vote yes. If you want it at $25,000, you're going to vote no. Okay? Very clear? So the motion is to reconsider the amendment. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please
Mayor,
call the
one
roll.
more time, clarification on that, just one more time for the good of the order.
If you want renewal fees at $5,000, vote yes.
Yes.
If you want them at $25,000, vote no. Clear? Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Shetty.
No.
Tupper.
No.
Bueller.
Yes.
Danforth.
Yes.
Helene.
No.
Jurens.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion
The
carries.
renewal fee is now $5,000. We are back to the original agenda motion, which is an approval for the resolution for the renewal fees in general. We already have a motion on that. And it's even, because, yeah. Any further conversation on this? Council, and I want to thank you. I mean, it's an imperfect process, but we have rules, and I hope that sometimes they're messy, but that's why you have rules that you abide by, so that you can have the debate in structure. So all those in favor of the renewal structure will vote aye. Those opposed say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Shetty.
Nay.
Tupper.
Aye.
Bueller. Danforth.
Aye.
Helene.
No.
Jurens.
Aye.
Peters.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We are now on to item 12B, a resolution of support of an application for financial assistance to the South Dakota Housing and Development Authority by 30 South LLC for the benefit of single and multifamily development. City Manager Mack, please tell us what this is.
Thank you, Mayor. This is similar to the other resolutions that you all have approved, which consequently enough have been very beneficial for 3 projects, housing projects here in Watertown. This is a 4th application. This is the area that is south, yes, get my directions right, south of Montgomery's, that has been rezoned. It's gone through the zoning process and through the Board of Adjustment. They have not submitted their concept plans, anything like that yet. They're just getting all of their ducks in a row. So when they're ready to apply, they have this particular piece of that application. It does not obligate the city to anything other than just supporting their project from an application perspective. I would answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Moved by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item 12C is an approval of the long-term capital improvement plan 2025 to 2029. Finance Officer Bob Zine? Or City Manager Mack, did you want to take it away?
I can. Thank you, Mayor. This is our long-term capital plan. It was presented to you back in October at the work session last week. We discussed removing any items related to the future street facility. Those will be coming back to you in some sort of comprehensive financial package. Other than that, there are no proposed changes to the long-term plan, and our finance officer and I will stand by for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the capital plan. Need a motion? Motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Peters. Open it up for questions and comments. Yeah, Councilman Danforth.
I'm all for what we have in there. I think there's been a nice job of looking at that. As I stated in the email, Mayor, to you and to Ms. Mack today, just for consideration maybe, that maybe we establish a 10-year plan with years 1 to 5 is kind of in the concrete, so to speak. And the years 6 to 10 is just a bigger outlook, but it keeps it visible, whatever those ideas and thoughts are. Really doesn't have any impact. It doesn't commit us to anything, but it just keeps us, as we transition from different council members or mayors or staff, it does paint some kind of a picture of what our thoughts were. That goes out farther than 5 years. 5 years just does not go out far. It's great for us now, and it's very important because we can have a pretty good understanding of what our needs are in that time frame and how we get the dollars to get to that point. 6 to 10 years out, just the good Lord only is the one that knows that. So I just think in the future, maybe we take a look at that and see if it has any merit. That's just a comment. Otherwise, I am in agreement with where we're at on the current CIP plan.
City Manager Mack, do you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think Councilman Danforth has bugged my office. Those are the exact conversations that we've been having internally. And you will remember that we worked with a firm called Ehlers to help build a financial model. And part of that is to help us build a 10-year comprehensive long-term, not just capital plan, but look at our operations over 10 years. Our Park and Rec director has already started putting together kind of his 10-year plan for the department. There's a small group of us that are going to be getting together at the beginning of the new year to map out what that process could look like. So we are in agreement that 10 years helps us plan just a little bit better than 5.
Any further questions, comments? Motion is to approve the plan. All those in favor will say aye. Opposed, say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Shetty?
Aye.
Tupper?
Aye.
Bueller? Danforth?
Aye.
Helene?
Aye.
Jurens?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. On to item 12D, an authorization for the finance officer to transfer surplus funds from the general obligation bonds fund. City Manager Mack, or do you want Finance Officer Bob Zine, please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is kind of more of a cleanup. So we had to open a separate fund when we issued the general obligation bonds. Sometimes what happens is essentially we are required to take about 105% of what the debt is for taxes, so that if people do not pay their taxes, we can still pay the debt. So this just kind of sometimes happens, there's a little bit left over. So the action in front of you tonight is to take that about 150,000 and we will transfer that to the general fund. If there's any questions, I can answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the authorization. Motion made by Councilman Danforth, second by Councilman Shetty. Any questions, comments? Councilman Danforth.
Yep. Ms. Bob Zine, could you explain to the public what got paid off of you and what that intent of that general obligation bond was? And
Yep. So this general obligation bond was what we used to build the event center. So essentially that has now been paid off. If people were to look at their property tax, if they could see the levies, each year when we were paying back these bonds, a levy was put against everybody's property taxes to pay for this. That is now paid off in full. We haven't issued any property tax for that in the last couple years. This is just that leftover now that it's been paid off.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on this, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the authorization. All those in favor will say aye. Opposed, say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Shetty?
Aye.
Tupper?
Aye.
Bueller? Danforth?
aye.
Helene?
Aye.
Jurens?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Any city council member announcements and introduction of topics for future discussion? I will start it off and just make an announcement. I want to thank the council for the work that they have put in tonight. I know depending upon what the subject is, some of us love talking about development out at the lake or medical marijuana. Some of us don't. I don't think any one of us likes talking about it for that amount of time, but I hope that you all understand and respect each other for the time that we put in as a council, and that is one of the reasons why you have my word. Because of the time that we put in, you have my word that whether it's someone talking about me or someone talking about any of you, I will gladly defend any of you in the court of anyone coming to tell us that we are not doing our job well. It doesn't mean doing our job well does not mean approving voting the way people want us to. And that is sometimes hard for a lot of everyone to understand. But anyway, I just want to say that and thank you for having my back, council. Any other announcements? Councilman Tupper?
Just to wish everybody in this great city of Watertown a happy holiday season, so.
Merry Christmas. Any other announcements?
I would like to say something. The mayor let out a few good words towards the council, but I appreciate the mayor tonight. He saw that there was maybe some confusion in that vote, and I saw it across here. Not everyone in the room got to see that, but he immediately saw Kyle,
Councilman Peters.
Councilman Peters. I don't know how many times I'm going to do this being a new councilman, but it's going to get better. But the point is to bring that back to absolutely give the council the final say in that resolution on the medical marijuana. I will have your back, Mayor. That was a stand-up job right there to let that come through.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other announcements?
About 26 an hour after tonight.
Councilman Bueller says that $1.26 an hour after tonight. I think you're being pretty generous. I think your COLA might have been more than 5. City manager report, take us out of this.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of announcements. The city facilities will be closed Friday, December 22nd, and Monday, December 25th, in observation of the Christmas holiday, as well as Monday, January 1st for New Year's. The next time you all will convene together is Tuesday, January 2nd. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to all of you. Thanks for a great year. Looking forward to 2024. And we have something kind of fun to wrap up our meeting with as it relates to the ice arena. I hope you all have had a chance to drive out by the building over the last couple of days. The exterior signage has gone up. Every day, the building looks a little different, and there's something new done, and they are scurrying to get that facility completed in January for us, so that we can be skating on it. When I say we, I don't mean me, but we can be skating on it in very early February. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our city attorney to share with you what the donor recognition design is going to look like within the building. We do have some agreements that'll be coming to you in January for some of these larger contributors. So take it away, Lisa.
Yeah, to kind of close on a fun note, I would hope, is, oops, God darn it. Shows how well I'm good at this. I thought you'd like to take a look at what will be the donor wall in the facility, as well as we'll go through some of the donor naming areas within the facility. If you haven't gone through the facility in a while, I heard that some of you witnessed the second pour, I believe. But it is coming together. It's going to be sharp. I'm excited. I finally went through last week purposefully for this, and was very impressed. It's going to be sharp. So this is our donor wall. We're trying to appreciate the distinguished platinum, diamond, what is that? What is that? Titanium? And then the gold, silver, bronze, and enthusiast donors. I believe our mayor is going to help us wordsmith a little bit. This paragraph right here. Yes, he was volunteered, just so you know. Our mayor was volunteered to help us with some wordsmithing here. Obviously, there really isn't a person on this donor wall, just so you know. It's for image purposes only.
Have a person on the wall.
And that will be when you're walking in the front door. It's not the immediate wall. It's kind of that, what I'm going to call indention, kind of lounge almost area to the left. And so this is just their other particulars. Let's see here. On this, so this is the front door to the ice, the main ice. As you all may be aware, First Premier Bank is sponsoring that first rink. Their name will go on the glass there, right next to the doors. And then there will also be some logo type First Premier within the ice arena itself. Glacial Lakes Energy has sponsored one of the penalty boxes. And Watertown Area Community Foundation has sponsored a meeting room. Again, this is where they'll go right next to the door. We are renaming that community room because that is how the directional signs have referred to the rooms as community rooms. And so that's what that's going to look like. And here's a little bit of another view of the First Premier Bank. This area here is for the second rink. And you will be getting a sponsored contract on that in January as well. Just so you can kind of see what the lettering will look like. This was just an example so that way you guys could see what was going to be used for the First Premier Bank rink. Let's see here. And then obviously this will be for the second rink right next to the doors. Right here is the penalty box, score booth, and another penalty box. These are the current sponsors of those areas for the donors. However, we are looking at, instead of the lettering font only, of actually having logos for those 3 entities on the actual, what we're calling assets. Again, the ticket office will be up top. Again, the Horning family is sponsoring that. Oops. Right here is the concession areas, and it is my understanding that it is Sharp Automotive. Here's a bigger version of the concession area. Now, for those, obviously, where the wall is dark, then the image of the font will be different. Again, here's just another image. Trying to see what else we got going on here. La, la, la. Okay, so this is the corridor. So once you go in the front doors and you turn to the right, there's actually doorways to get down to the locker rooms. And next to that is a wall where there'll be the 3 TV monitors. And so right next to that will be Crestone Company's corridor. Or it could be on the glass as you're going down to the locker rooms. We actually left that up to Crestone to decide, so we're still waiting to hear from them on that. For Montgomery's, they are donating in-kind donation of the lounge furniture, which is in that fireplace area. And they will have a plaque on the wall there next to the fireplace identifying that. For the press box, because no one other than the press would more than likely be in the press box, their signage will actually be on the mezzanine level as you're going up, so that way other passerbys, in other words, could actually appreciate that donor. Again, Lou's Fireworks is doing another of the community rooms. And then for the locker rooms, again, it'll be a plaque next to the door. And that, I believe, is all that we have. And if there's any questions, I can certainly answer them. But basically, we needed the images so that we could assure the donors, when you guys approve the agreements, what they're actually getting as far as an appreciation of their donation. And so now that we have these images, we can put all those agreements together and have them for your approval at the first meeting in January. Any other questions? I can certainly answer them.
Just like to point out, for any media person still paying attention, we would like to make some of these pictures available to you if you want to use those in a news story, because this is really good news. I'd also like to say that I believe that the head of Build It Now, Jody Driscoll, will have a nice announcement that I'm going to leave for her to say, but we're going to leave that for another day. I don't need to have questions or comments, but anyone have any questions or comments on the presentation? Councilman Schutte?
I just think it's interesting a law firm does the penalty box. They're sponsoring the penalty.
Actually,
It's the opposing team penalty.
Yeah. Actually, I believe that might have been like the first donation we had. And that was a specific ask from the law firm to get the penalty box. Yeah.
And everyone have a happy holiday.
Yes. All right, we have no reason to go into anything else, City Manager?
Just related to the ice arena, because I don't get this opportunity very often, I do want to thank the staff. Lisa has spent significant time wrangling all of these agreements. Heath and his crew, I think every single day, are doing something with the ice arena. Dusty and his crew are working incredibly hard to make sure that when we get in that building, we can start operating it. They won't let me drive the Zamboni. I asked, so good for them, I guess, for following the rules. I don't know. Anyway, a significant amount of time has gone into this facility, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you all for your work on it.
Thank you. There is no reason to go into executive session. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Councilman, actually, everyone rushed on that. I'm just going to call out Schutte and Tupper. Any conversation on that? Hearing none, the motion is to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Good night and Merry Christmas, Watertown.